My CEO grabbed my wrist in a crowded Manhattan bar and hissed words that would destroy everything I knew about power, fear, and the woman who controlled my career. Take me home, or you're fired. But this wasn't the Ice Queen power play I expected. Her hand trembled against my skin. Her eyes, those same eyes that had fired 3 people last month without blinking, were wild with something I'd never seen before. Terror. She wasn't threatening me. She was begging. And the man watching us from across the room was smiling like he'd already won. Stay with me until the end. Hit that like button and comment what city you're watching from so I can see how far this story travels. The thing about Friday nights in Manhattan is they all blur together until one doesn't. Noah Carter had been living in New York for 3 years, and he'd learned the rhythm. Leave the office by 7 if you could, meet your roommate at whatever bar was equidistant between convenience and atmosphere, drink exactly enough to forget the week, but not enough to ruin the weekend. It was a science, really. A careful calibration of alcohol and ambition that every 20-something in this city had mastered by their second winter. Tonight was supposed to be no different. The Crown and Anchor was packed, a sea of blazers and designer jeans, of calculated laughter and strategic networking disguised as friendship. Noah sat at the bar next to Marcus, his roommate and fellow survivor of the advertising trenches, nursing a bourbon that cost too much and tasted like smoke and regret. "You look like someone kicked your dog," Marcus said, signaling the bartender for another round. "I don't have a dog." "Metaphorically kicked your metaphorical dog." Noah smiled despite himself. "Vivian rejected my campaign concept today. 3rd time this month. Didn't even look at it for more than 30 seconds before she said it. Lacked vision." Marcus winced. Ouch. The Ice Queen strikes again. Vivian Rowe, CEO of Sterling and Rowe, one of the most prestigious advertising agencies on the East Coast. She was a legend in the industry. A woman who'd built an empire before she turned 40, who'd bought out her misogynistic former partner and renamed the company with her name alone. She was brilliant, ruthless, and according to office legend, had once made a grown man cry during a pitch meeting just by raising one perfectly sculpted eyebrow. Noah both admired and feared her in equal measure. "She's not that bad," Noah said, though the words felt hollow even to him. "She made Jenny from accounts cry last week over a font choice. Jenny cries when her coffee order is wrong. Still." Marcus took a long drink. "You've got to admit the woman's terrifying. Beautiful, sure, like a glacier is beautiful right before it crushes your ship, but terrifying." Noah couldn't argue with that. Vivian Rowe was objectively stunning, tall, with sharp cheekbones that could cut glass, dark hair always pulled back in a severe bun, eyes the color of steel. She wore power suits like armor and heels that clicked against marble floors like a countdown to judgment. She was untouchable, unknowable, a force of nature wrapped in Armani. "I just want her to see that I'm capable of more than—" Noah's words died in his throat. Because she was here. Vivian Rowe was walking through the Crown and Anchor like a hurricane materializing in the middle of a garden party. But something was wrong. Everything was wrong. Her hair, that perfectly controlled dark silk, was coming loose from its pins, wisps falling around her face. Her blazer was buttoned incorrectly. Her eyes were scanning the crowd with an expression Noah had never seen on her face before. Panic. Pure, undiluted panic. "Is that—" Marcus started. Noah didn't hear the rest, because Vivian's gaze locked onto his across the crowded bar, and she moved through the crush of bodies like a woman possessed. People stepped aside instinctively, sensing something feral in her approach. She reached him in seconds that felt like hours. Her hand closed around his wrist. Not gently, but desperately, fingers digging into his skin hard enough to leave marks. Up close, Noah could see things that shattered every assumption he'd ever made about Vivian Rowe. Her hands were shaking. There was a smudge of mascara beneath one eye. Her breath was coming in short, controlled bursts like she was physically holding herself together. She leaned in close, so close he could smell her perfume. Something expensive and floral that he'd caught hints of in elevators and boardrooms, but never this close, never this real. Her lips nearly brushed his ear. "Take me home," she whispered, her voice rough and raw in a way that made his stomach drop. "Or you're fired." Noah's brain short-circuited. This couldn't be happening. This couldn't be real. CEOs didn't proposition their junior employees in bars. Ice queens didn't tremble. Vivian Rowe didn't beg. But that's what this was. Underneath the threat, underneath the words that sounded like a power play, Noah heard it. Desperation. Fear. A woman using the only weapon she had left, his job, because she was out of all other options. What? He managed. Please. The word cracked on her lips, and Noah felt something fundamental shift in his understanding of the universe. Don't look behind me. Don't just stand up. Put your arm around me. Make it look like we're together, like I came here to meet you. Noah's mind raced. Every HR training, every warning about workplace relationships, every cautionary tale about CEOs who'd fallen from grace, all of it screamed at him to walk away, to politely extract himself from whatever nightmare scenario was unfolding. But he looked into her eyes, those steel gray eyes that had terrified him for 3 years, and saw something that made all the warnings evaporate. She was absolutely terrified. Okay, Noah heard himself say. Okay, just breathe. He stood up, hyper-aware of Marcus's stunned expression, of the eyes turning toward them, of the heat of Vivian's body as he wrapped an arm around her shoulders. She fit against him like she was made for it, tall even in her heels so that her head reached his shoulder. She pressed into him, and he felt her whole body trembling. Keep walking, she murmured against his chest, toward the door, slowly, like we're leaving together, like this is normal. Noah's feet moved on autopilot. The crowd parted around them, some people staring, others too drunk or too absorbed in their own dramas to notice. Vivian's fingers clutched the fabric of his shirt, holding on like he was a lifeline. They were halfway to the exit when Noah caught it, a man watching them from across the bar. He was tall, blonde, wearing a suit that probably cost more than Noah's monthly rent. Handsome in that sharp, calculated way that usually came with trust funds and prep school credentials. But it was his expression that made Noah's skin crawl, a smile that was all teeth and cruelty, satisfaction dripping from every perfectly symmetrical feature. And next to him, draped over his arm like an accessory, a woman who couldn't have been older than 23, stunning and oblivious, laughing at something he'd just whispered in her ear. Vivian's grip on Noah tightened painfully. Don't look at him, she hissed. Don't give him the satisfaction. But Noah was already putting the pieces together. The terror in Vivian's eyes, the way she'd materialized in this specific bar, the man watching them with that knowing, victorious smile. This wasn't about work. This was personal. The cold Manhattan air hit them like a slap as they pushed through the door. Vivian immediately stepped away from Noah, putting distance between them, her arms wrapping around herself. They stood on the sidewalk while Friday night chaos swirled around them, taxis honking, people laughing, the city humming with its usual indifferent symphony. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Vivian's chest rose and fell with deep breaths, her eyes closed, her professional mask trying desperately to reassemble itself. Noah watched the transformation, the way she straightened her spine, adjusted her blazer, smoothed back the loose strands of hair with shaking fingers. Ms. Rowe, he started. Don't. Her voice was sharp again, cutting. The Ice Queen returning from whatever hell she'd just escaped. Don't say anything. Don't. Her voice cracked. Just don't. Noah shoved his hands in his pockets, uncertain. Every instinct told him to ask if she was okay, to offer help, to do something. But this was still Vivian Rowe, still his CEO, still the woman who could destroy his career with a single word. I'm sorry, she said finally, and the words sounded like they were being torn from her throat. That was inappropriate, unprofessional. I shouldn't have. She laughed, a brittle sound that had nothing to do with humor. I shouldn't have threatened your job. That was unconscionable. Who was he? Noah asked quietly. Vivian's eyes snapped to his, fierce and warning. No one. Nothing. It doesn't matter. It clearly matters. It doesn't. She straightened to her full height, and for a moment Noah saw the woman from the boardroom again, imperious, untouchable. This conversation never happened. You were never here. We never. She gestured vaguely between them. This doesn't exist. Noah should have agreed. should have nodded and gone back inside, returned to Marcus and his bourbon and his simple Friday night. Instead, he said, "He looked like he was trying to hurt you." Vivian's composure cracked again, just for a second, a flash of pain so raw it made Noah's chest ache. "He already did," she whispered. Then louder, forceful, "Go back inside, Mr. Carter. Forget this happened. On Monday, everything will be normal. We'll be professional. This—" She waved her hand, encompassing the sidewalk, the moment, the terrifying vulnerability she'd shown. "This was an aberration. It won't happen again." She turned to walk away, her heels clicking against concrete. "Miss Rowe," Noah called after her. She stopped but didn't turn around. "Are you going to be okay?" Her shoulders tensed. For a moment, Noah thought she might ignore him entirely. Then, so quietly, he almost missed it. "I don't know." And she was gone, disappearing into the flow of pedestrians, swallowed by the city that had made her and might now break her. Noah stood alone on the sidewalk for a long time after she left, trying to reconcile the woman he'd just held, trembling and desperate and so thoroughly human, with the legend he'd worked for. Trying to make sense of a world where Vivian Rowe could be afraid. When he finally went back inside, Marcus was waiting with wide eyes and a fresh bourbon. "What the hell was that?" Marcus demanded. Noah took the drink and downed half of it in one burning swallow. "I have no idea," he said, but he knew one thing with absolute certainty. Monday morning, when he walked into Sterling and Rowe, everything would be different. Not because Vivian had said so, because he'd seen behind the mask. He'd felt her fear, her desperation, her humanity. And you couldn't unsee something like that. You couldn't unknow the trembling fingers of a woman the world thought was made of ice. Boys? The weekend passed in a blur of anxiety and confusion. Noah tried to work on his portfolio, tried to enjoy Saturday brunch with Marcus, tried to do anything that might distract him from replaying those few minutes on the sidewalk. But Vivian's voice kept echoing in his head. "Take me home or you're fired." The desperation underneath the threat. The way she'd clung to him like he was the only solid thing in a world that had suddenly become quicksand. Marcus, to his credit, didn't press for details. He'd seen enough to know that whatever had happened was bigger than office gossip, stranger than their usual Friday night adventures. "You're being weird," Marcus observed on Sunday evening, watching Noah pace their small living room for the 15th time. "I'm not being weird. You've reorganized the bookshelf 3 times. You alphabetized our cereal. You're being weird." Noah stopped pacing. "If you saw someone you respected in trouble, I mean really in trouble, would you just forget about it because they told you to?" Marcus considered this, his expression uncharacteristically serious. "Depends. Is this someone actually asking for help, or are they asking to be left alone?" "I don't know. Both, maybe?" "Then you respect their wishes and stay ready in case they change their mind." Marcus stood up, clapped a hand on Noah's shoulder. "Look, I don't know what happened with Rowe on Friday, but that woman didn't become a CEO by being helpless. If she needs help, she'll ask. Your job is to not make it weird at work." Sound advice. Noah repeated it to himself like a mantra as he rode the subway Monday morning, as he walked through the gleaming glass doors of Sterling and Rowe, as he settled at his desk in the creative department's open plan office. Don't make it weird. Act normal. She said it never happened, so it never happened. He made it until 10:30 before his phone buzzed with a message that made his heart stop. "My office. Now. VR." The creative department went silent. Everyone knew that tone, that summons. You didn't get called to Vivian Rowe's office for good news. "Nice knowing you," someone whispered as Noah stood up. His legs felt like water as he crossed the floor toward the executive wing. The elevator ride to the top floor took forever and no time at all. The CEO's suite was all glass and steel and intimidation, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Manhattan, modern art that probably cost more than Noah's student loans, and a receptionist who looked at him like he was tracking mud on pristine white carpet. "She's expecting you," the receptionist said, her voice dripping with the kind of pity usually reserved for condemned prisoners. Noah knocked once on the heavy door. "Come in." Vivian's voice. Controlled. Professional. No hint of the woman from Friday night. He stepped inside. Vivian sat behind a desk that looked like it had been carved from a single piece of black marble. She was perfect again. Hair in its severe bun, makeup flawless, wearing a charcoal suit that screamed power and money. Everything about her posture said CEO. Nothing about her suggested she'd ever been afraid of anything in her life, except her eyes. For just a second, when she looked up at him, Noah saw it. A flash of the same fear, the same vulnerability. Then it was gone, replaced by professional courtesy. "Close the door, Mr. Carter." Noah obeyed, his heart hammering. "Sit." He sat. Vivian folded her hands on her desk, a gesture Noah had seen her use in meetings when she was about to destroy someone's entire proposal. He braced himself. "I owe you an apology," she said. Of all the things Noah had expected, that wasn't one of them. "Ms. Rowe, you don't—" "I do." Her voice was firm. "What I did on Friday was completely inappropriate. I used my position of authority to coerce you into an uncomfortable situation. I threatened your employment. Those actions go against everything this company stands for, and I'm deeply ashamed of them." She pulled out a document from her desk drawer, slid it across the marble surface toward him. "This is a formal apology, along with assurances that there will be no retaliation of any kind for Friday's incident. I've also included a recommendation for a transfer to any department you choose, with a significant raise, should you feel uncomfortable continuing to work under my leadership." Noah stared at the document without touching it. "I don't want a transfer." Vivian blinked. "Mr. Carter? And you don't owe me an apology. Not for that, anyway." Noah met her eyes, saw her surprise. "You were scared. Someone was threatening you, or intimidating you, or... I don't know exactly what was happening, but you weren't trying to abuse your power. You were trying to survive something." Silence filled the office. Outside the windows, the city sprawled endlessly, indifferent to human drama. "That's generous of you," Vivian said finally, her voice carefully neutral. "But it doesn't excuse—" "Who was he?" Noah interrupted. Vivian's mask slipped. Just for a second, pain flashed across her features, raw and deep, and clearly unhealed. "That's not relevant to—" "It's completely relevant." Noah leaned forward. "Look, I get it. You're the CEO, you're supposed to be invincible. But what I saw on Friday, that wasn't a power trip. That was someone in genuine distress. And He paused, choosing his words carefully. "I'd like to help. If you'll let me." Vivian laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You can't help with this, Mr. Carter. This isn't a campaign that needs a creative solution. This is my personal life, which I've worked very hard to keep separate from this company." "Then why am I here?" The question hung in the air between them. Vivian stood up, walked to the window. Her reflection in the glass looked small somehow, despite her height, despite the power suit and the corner office and the title that made grown men nervous. "His name is Grant Maddox," she said quietly. "We were engaged. 3 years. He proposed on a yacht in Greece, gave me a ring that cost more than most people's cars. Everyone said we were perfect together. The power couple. Industry royalty." She pressed her palm against the glass. 6 months ago, I found out he'd been cheating on me. Not just once. Multiple affairs. Some lasting months. One of them was with my former assistant, a girl I'd mentored, promoted, trusted. Her voice was hollow. When I confronted him, he didn't even have the decency to look ashamed. He said I was too focused on my career, that I was cold, that he needed someone who could make him feel wanted. Noah felt anger coiling in his chest. "That's predictable?" Vivian turned from the window. "That's what my therapist calls it. Classic narcissist behavior. Blame the victim for your own failings." She walked back to her desk but didn't sit. "I ended it. Threw the ring at him. Literally. Very dramatic. Very unlike me. And I thought that was the end of it. But it wasn't. No." Her hands clenched into fists. "He's been showing up. At events I attend. At restaurants where I have reservations. Always with a different woman, always younger, always making sure I see them. Making sure I know he's moved on. That he's happy. That leaving me was the best thing that ever happened to him." "That's harassment," Noah said flatly. "That's New York," Vivian corrected. "We run in the same circles, attend the same galas. Our companies work with the same clients. I can't prove he's doing it deliberately, and even if I could, what would I do?" Take out a restraining order? The headlines would destroy me. Bitter CEO can't handle X moving on. Ice Queen cracks. Vivian Rowe loses control. She sat down heavily and for a moment looked utterly exhausted. I've worked for 20 years to build this company, to earn respect in an industry that still thinks women belong in creative, not leadership. I can't let him take that from me. I can't let anyone see me as... She gestured vaguely at herself. Weak. Noah understood then. The mask wasn't just for show, it was survival. In a world that would tear her apart for showing emotion, Vivian Rowe had learned to become ice, and Grant Maddox had found the one crack in that armor. He'd made her feel humiliated, vulnerable, afraid, and he was exploiting it. So on Friday, Noah said slowly, when you saw him at the bar, I panicked, completely, thoroughly panicked. I couldn't face him alone again, couldn't stand there while he paraded his latest conquest like... She stopped, took a breath. You were there. You're, forgive me, irrelevant enough that people wouldn't question it, junior enough that you'd be too afraid to refuse. I thought I could use you as a shield, just for a moment, just to get out of there without giving him the satisfaction of seeing me run. Irrelevant, Noah repeated, a small smile tugging at his lips despite everything. That's accurate, actually. Vivian's expression softened slightly. I am sorry for all of it. The threat, the manipulation, dragging you into my mess. Apology accepted, but I still want to help. There's nothing... Actually, Noah interrupted. There might be. Vivian raised an eyebrow, the expression that usually preceded someone getting eviscerated. But there was curiosity there too. Noah took a breath, committing to the insane idea forming in his head. How many of these events do you have coming up? The kind where Grant might show up? Too many. There's a client dinner Thursday, a charity gala next week, the industry awards in 2 weeks. Why? Because you were right about using me as a shield. Except you went about it wrong. Noah leaned forward. You threatened me, which made it coercion, made it feel wrong. But what if, and hear me out, what if you asked instead? Vivian stared at him. Asked you to what exactly? To be your date, your fake boyfriend, your very public, very visible relationship that shows Grant Maddox exactly how little you care about him anymore. The words sounded insane out loud. Noah waited for Vivian to laugh, to dismiss him, to have security escort him out. Instead, she went very still. You're serious, she said, completely. Think about it. You show up to these events with someone on your arm, someone who's clearly into you, someone who makes you smile. It takes away Grant's power. He can't humiliate you if you look happy. He can't win if you've already moved on. Mr. Carter, that's Noah. If we're going to fake date, you should probably call me Noah. Vivian shook her head. This is a terrible idea. The complications alone, HR would have a field day. And if anyone found out it was fake, who would know? We work together. We have plausible proximity. I'm young enough that people would think you're having a midlife crisis, but old enough that it's not creepy. And Noah paused, making sure she understood this part. I volunteer. No threats, no coercion. Just one person helping another get through a difficult situation. Vivian studied him for a long moment. Noah could practically see her brilliant mind analyzing every angle, every risk, every potential disaster. Why would you do this? She asked finally. You barely know me, and what you do know, by your own colleague's admission, is that I'm terrifying. Noah considered his answer carefully. Friday night, I saw something most people never see. I saw you as human, fallible, afraid. And he searched for the right words. I spent 3 years being intimidated by you, by your success, your brilliance, your absolute certainty. But now I know the truth. You're not invincible. You're just incredibly good at pretending to be. And that's actually more impressive. Vivian's eyes glistened. She blinked rapidly, and the moment passed. The client dinner is Thursday, she said, her voice steady again. 7 p.m. The Ashford Room. I'd need you in a proper suit, which I'll provide. You'd need to know basic information about me, background, preferences, how we supposedly met. We'd need our story straight. Noah's heart leapt. So you're saying, I'm saying I'll consider it, on several conditions. Vivian held up a finger. 1. This arrangement is strictly professional and temporary. It ends when the grant situation resolves itself. 2. Absolute discretion. No one can know this is fake. Not your roommate, not your friends, not anyone. 3. You can back out at any time, no questions asked, no repercussions. And 4, she fixed him with that steel-gray gaze. You tell me right now if you have any ulterior motives. Because if this is some elaborate scheme to sleep with your CEO or leverage this for advancement, I will destroy you so thoroughly you'll never work in this industry again. Noah met her eyes without flinching. No ulterior motives, no agenda. Just call it human decency. Human decency, Vivian repeated as if testing the words. Then, surprising them both, she smiled. A real smile, small but genuine. That's refreshingly naive, Mr. Carter. Noah. Noah. She extended her hand across the desk. If we're going to do this, we do it right, professional, convincing, no half measures. Noah took her hand. Her grip was firm, cool, steady. Deal, he said. And just like that, Noah Carter, junior creative, perpetually overlooked, professionally irrelevant, became the fake boyfriend of the most powerful woman in advertising. He had no idea what he'd just signed up for. But looking at Vivian's face, the relief softening the sharp edges, the gratitude she was trying so hard to hide, Noah thought maybe, just maybe, this insane plan might actually work, or it would explode spectacularly and take his entire career down with it. Monday afternoon passed in a surreal haze. Noah returned to his desk in the creative department, where his colleagues immediately swarmed with questions he couldn't answer. He mumbled something about a project review and buried himself in work, hyper-aware of every glance toward Vivian's office, every whisper that might be about him. At 5 p.m., his phone buzzed. Tomorrow, 6 a.m., my office. Come prepared to take notes. VR6 in the morning. Noah groaned, but he was committed now. That night, he lay awake wondering what he'd gotten himself into, wondering if Vivian Rowe, Ice Queen, legend, untouchable CEO, was about to become the most complicated thing that had ever happened to him. He had no idea how right he was. Tuesday morning arrived with the kind of cold that made Manhattan feel like it was punishing its inhabitants for daring to live there. Noah stood outside Sterling and Row at 5:50 a.m., clutching a coffee that was already losing its warmth to the wind, watching his breath crystallize in the air. The building looked different at this hour, less like a temple of commerce and more like a sleeping giant, all dark windows and silent promise. The lobby security guard gave him a curious look as he signed in. 6 a.m. meetings weren't unheard of in advertising, but they usually involved creative emergencies or client disasters, not junior employees being summoned to the CEO's office. The elevator ride felt longer in the pre-dawn quiet. Noah's reflection in the polished doors looked uncertain, nervous. He tried to arrange his features into something more confident and failed miserably. Vivian's receptionist desk was empty, of course. The whole executive floor was dark, except for one office at the end of the hall, light spilling from beneath the door like a beacon. Noah knocked softly. "Come in." Vivian sat at her desk surrounded by papers, her laptop open, 2 coffee cups already empty beside her. She'd clearly been here for hours. Her hair was still in its severe bun, but she'd forgone the blazer, just a crisp white blouse tucked into tailored black pants. Without the armor of her full suit, she looked younger, more human. "You're early," she said without looking up from whatever she was reading. "You said 6. It's 5:58. Early is on time. On time is late." She finally glanced at him, and something like approval flickered across her face. "Coffee? Already have some. You'll need more. We have a lot to cover." She gestured to the chair across from her desk. "Sit," and closed the door. Noah obeyed, settling into the same chair where she'd apologized to him just yesterday. The office felt different at this hour, more intimate somehow, without the city noise and the bright daylight to dilute the space between them. Vivian slid a leather portfolio across the desk toward him. "Everything you need to know about me. educational background, career history, family information, preferences, habits. Study it. Memorize it. If we're going to convince people we're in a relationship, you need to know me better than my own mother does. Noah opened the portfolio. Inside were neatly organized tabs: biography, career, family, preferences, social circles. Each section was typed in perfect detail, like she'd created a dossier on herself. "This is incredibly thorough," Noah said, slightly awed. "I don't do anything halfway." Vivian stood, walked to her window. The sky was starting to lighten, Manhattan slowly waking up beneath them. "The client dinner is in 2 days. That's not much time to build a believable relationship." "What's our story? How did we meet?" Vivian turned, and Noah saw that she'd already thought this through. Of course she had. "We keep it close to the truth. You're a creative at my company. We've worked together for 3 years, but never interacted much beyond professional capacity. 6 weeks ago, you stayed late working on a campaign pitch. I was also working late, as I often do. We ended up in the break room at the same time, 2 a.m., both exhausted. We started talking, really talking, not just the surface-level office conversation. You said something that made me laugh, actually laugh, for the first time in months, and I saw you differently." She delivered this like she was presenting a campaign strategy, all business. But Noah noticed her fingers were twisting together, a small tell of nervousness. "What did I say? To make you laugh?" Vivian paused. "Something self-deprecating but perceptive. You have a tendency toward that in your presentations. It's endearing in small doses, though you overuse it." She said this almost absently, then seemed to catch herself. "We'll say you made a joke about how the coffee machine was the only thing in the building older than me. Inappropriate, which is why I noticed. Most people are too afraid to joke with me." Noah couldn't help smiling. "That does sound like something I'd say after too much caffeine and not enough sleep." After that night, we started finding excuses to cross paths. Coffee runs, late nights. Eventually, I asked you to dinner, somewhere quiet, outside Manhattan. We wanted privacy while we figured out what this was. Vivian returned to her desk, sat down with perfect posture. "We've been seeing each other for about a month, keeping it secret because of the obvious complications. I'm your CEO, there's a significant age gap. HR policies are murky on workplace relationships between executives and non-executives." "How much age gap are we talking?" Noah asked carefully. "I'm 39. You're 27, 12 years. Not scandalous, but enough to raise eyebrows." She met his gaze directly. "Does that bother you?" "Should it?" "Some people will assume I'm having a midlife crisis, that I'm using you, that you're using me for career advancement. We need to be prepared for those assumptions." Noah leaned back in his chair, studying her. In the growing morning light, he could see the fine lines around her eyes, the slight shadows beneath them that makeup usually hid. She looked tired, not just from being awake since probably 4 a.m., but bone-deep tired, the kind of exhaustion that came from holding yourself together too tightly for too long. "What do you need from me?" he asked. "At this dinner, what's the role I'm playing?" Vivian's expression softened slightly. "Attentive but not obsequious. Confident enough to be with me, but humble enough that it's believable. You should touch me occasionally. My hand, my shoulder, small gestures that suggest intimacy. Make eye contact when I'm speaking. Laugh at my jokes, even when they're not funny. And if Grant is there," her voice caught. She cleared her throat. "If Grant is there, you stay close. You don't react to him. You treat him like he's a stranger because to you, he should be. Can you do that?" "Yes." You answered very quickly. "Because it's an easy answer." Noah held her gaze. "I'm good at reading people. It's what makes me decent at advertising. And right now, I'm reading that you need someone who won't ask too many questions and won't make this harder than it needs to be. So that's what I'll be." Vivian stared at him for a long moment. Then, almost imperceptibly, her shoulders relaxed. "Thank you," she said quietly. They spent the next 2 hours going through the portfolio. Noah learned that Vivian grew up in Boston, daughter of a literature professor and a public defender. That she went to Yale on scholarship, graduated top of her class, started at Sterling and Rowe as an intern, and worked her way up through sheer brilliance and relentless drive. That she bought out her partner 5 years ago after he tried to claim credit for her ideas one too many times. That she took her coffee black with one sugar, hated seafood, loved old movies from the 40s, ran 5 miles every morning at 5:30, and had a photographic memory for numbers. He learned that she had no siblings, that her mother died when she was 25, that her father remarried and moved to Arizona, that she spoke fluent French and passable Italian, that she'd been engaged once before Grant, a brief thing in her 20s that ended amicably, that she owned a brownstone in Brooklyn Heights and a cabin in the Catskills she never had time to visit. Favorite book? Noah asked, scanning the preferences section. Rebecca, by Daphne du Maurier. Movie? Double Indemnity. The original, not the remake. Music? Jazz, Miles Davis, John Coltrane, Billie Holiday. I find most modern music exhausting. She poured herself another coffee. Your turn. My turn. If I know everything about you and you know everything about me, but you don't know anything about yourself that I should know, the asymmetry will show. Vivian pulled out a fresh legal pad. Talk. I'll take notes. So Noah talked. About growing up in Ohio, middle-class suburbs, and high school football games he never attended because he was in the art room. About his parents, still married, still living in the same house, still baffled by his decision to move to New York. About his degree in communications from a state school nobody in Manhattan had heard of. About the 3 years of struggle and rejection and slow, painful progress in an industry that chewed up people like him and spit them out. Vivian wrote everything down in neat handwriting, occasionally asking clarifying questions. What was his mother's name? Susan. His father's occupation? Accountant. Siblings? One sister, Emily, married with twins. Hobbies? Photography, though he hadn't picked up his camera in months. Reading, mostly thriller novels. Cooking, when he had time, which was never. Favorite food? Vivian asked. My mom's lasagna. But in New York, there's this Thai place in Queens that makes curry that's basically perfect. Alcohol of choice? Bourbon. Nothing fancy, just whatever's on the middle shelf. Last relationship? Noah hesitated. Ended 8 months ago. Her name was Claire. She was a graphic designer. We were together for 2 years. It ended because... He paused, choosing his words carefully. Because she wanted someone who was already successful, not someone who might be successful someday. She got tired of waiting for my career to happen. Vivian stopped writing, looked up at him. Something in her expression shifted. Recognition, maybe. Or sympathy. That must have been difficult, she said. It was honest. I can respect that, even if it hurt. Noah smiled wryly. At least she didn't cheat on me with someone younger and then parade them around to make me feel inadequate. Vivian flinched. Fair point. The morning sun was fully up now, flooding the office with light. Outside, Manhattan was in full swing, cars honking, people rushing, the city's endless hungry energy. But in Vivian's office, time felt suspended, like they existed in a bubble where normal rules didn't apply. We should address the physical aspect, Vivian said, and Noah's brain momentarily short-circuited. The what? Physical intimacy. Hand-holding, touching, proximity. If we're supposed to be a couple, we need to be comfortable with casual contact. Right now you look terrified every time I come within 3 feet of you. I'm not terrified. Vivian raised an eyebrow. Okay, maybe mildly terrified, Noah admitted. You're my CEO. 3 days ago, you were this untouchable figure who could fire me with a word. Now I'm supposed to hold your hand at dinner. It's a mental adjustment. Stand up, Vivian said. What? Stand up. We're going to practice. Noah stood, feeling ridiculous. Vivian walked around her desk and stood in front of him. Even in flats, she'd kicked off her heels hours ago. She was nearly his height. Give me your hand, she said. Slowly, Noah extended his hand. Vivian took it, her fingers cool and steady against his palm. Her grip was firm but not aggressive, natural but deliberate. See? Just hands. Nothing terrifying. Her voice was gentle, almost amused. Now, when we're at dinner, you might do this. She shifted her grip, lacing her fingers through his. More intimate. Suggests familiarity. Or this. She released his hand, placed her palm on his forearm instead. Guiding, protective. You'd use this when we're walking together. Noah's skin burned where she touched him, but not from fear, from awareness, from the sudden uncomfortable realization that Vivian Rowe wasn't just his CEO or a legend or an ice queen. She was a woman, a beautiful, intelligent, complicated woman who smelled like expensive perfume and coffee, whose hand fit perfectly in his, whose eyes were the exact color of storm clouds. "You're tense," Vivian observed. "You're my boss." "I'm aware, but at dinner, I won't be. I'll just be Vivian, a woman you care about, a woman you want to protect." She stepped closer, and Noah's breath caught. "Can you do that? Can you look at me and see someone other than the CEO?" Noah forced himself to meet her eyes. Really look at her. Not the power suit or the perfect hair or the reputation, but the person underneath. The woman who'd been betrayed and humiliated, who was terrified of seeming weak, who'd built walls so high she'd forgotten how to let anyone in. "Yeah," he said softly, "I can do that." Something flickered in Vivian's expression. Surprise, maybe, or relief. She held his gaze for a long moment, then stepped back, the professional mask sliding back into place. "Good. Practice that before Thursday." She returned to her desk, all business again. "I've arranged for you to get fitted for a suit this afternoon, 4 p.m., Bergdorf's. Everything's already paid for. Don't argue." "I wasn't going to, You were thinking about it. I can see it on your face. You're very expressive, Noah. It's charming, but also makes you a terrible liar. Work on that." Noah laughed despite himself. "Any other critiques?" "Several, but we're out of time. I have a 9 a.m. meeting, and you should actually do some work today so people don't get suspicious about why you were here at 6 in the morning." She walked him to the door. "Between now and Thursday, we don't interact more than usual. No sudden lunch meetings, no extended conversations in hallways. We maintain the pretense that nothing has changed. Until Thursday." "Until Thursday." Vivian opened the door, then paused. "Noah?" "Yeah?" "If at any point this becomes too much, if you want out, you just have to say so. No judgment, no consequences. I mean that." Noah studied her face, saw the sincerity there, the fear that he'd realize what he'd signed up for, and run. "I'm not going anywhere," he said. Vivian nodded once, then closed the door between them. Noah made it back to his desk in a daze. Marcus wasn't in yet. No one was. So he sat in the quiet creative department and tried to process what had just happened. He'd spent 2 hours learning everything about Vivian Rowe. He'd held her hand. He'd looked into her eyes and seen past the legend to the lonely, hurt woman underneath. And in 2 days, he was going to walk into a room full of advertising executives and pretend to be in love with her. His phone buzzed. A text from Vivian. "Don't forget, Bergdorf's, 4 p.m. Wear the navy suit they pick out. Burn whatever you were planning to wear." Despite everything, Noah smiled. The next 2 days passed in a blur of normalcy and surreal preparation. At work, nothing changed. Vivian remained the ice queen, critiquing presentations with surgical precision, making grown men sweat during status meetings. Noah remained invisible, churning out concepts that got rejected more often than not. But Tuesday evening, Noah stood in Bergdorf Goodman while a tailor with Italian accent and measuring tape treated him like a mannequin. The suit they assembled cost more than 3 months of his rent. Midnight navy, perfectly tailored, with a crisp white shirt and a tie that Vivian had apparently selected herself. When Noah looked in the mirror, he barely recognized the man staring back. He looked successful, confident, like someone who belonged on Vivian Rowe's arm. Wednesday night, Noah couldn't sleep. He lay awake running through details. Her favorite movie, her mother's name, the story of their fake first kiss that Vivian had texted him at midnight. They'd supposedly kissed in her office after everyone else had gone home during one of their late-night conversations. She'd leaned across her desk to point at something on his laptop, and he'd turned at the same moment, and suddenly they were close enough to feel each other breathe. He'd asked if he could kiss her. She'd said yes. It had been soft, tentative, perfect. It was such a good story that Noah almost wished it were true. Thursday arrived with brutal clarity. Noah dressed carefully in the expensive suit, taking longer than usual with his hair, his shoes, his everything. Marcus watched with confused amusement. You have a date? Marcus asked. Something like that. With who? Noah hesitated. The lie tasted wrong in his mouth, but he'd promised Vivian absolute discretion. Someone from outside work. I'll tell you about it later. You're being weird again. I know. The day at work crawled by. Noah couldn't focus on anything, kept checking his phone for messages from Vivian. None came. She was probably in meetings, being brilliant, crushing presentations. At 5 p.m., his phone finally buzzed. Car picks you up at 6:30. Meet me there at 7. Try not to look terrified. Noah left the office at 6, changed into his new suit in the bathroom of a Starbucks, and waited on the corner where Vivian had told him. At 6:30 exactly, a black car pulled up. The driver knew his name. The interior smelled like leather and money. The Ashford Room was the kind of restaurant where reservations required 3 months' notice and a blood sacrifice. The kind of place where the menu had no prices, and the wine list was a leather-bound book. Noah had never felt more out of place in his life. But then he saw Vivian. She stood in the entrance, talking to the maitre d', and Noah's brain stopped functioning. She wore a dress, dark emerald green, elegant but not showy, with a neckline that suggested rather than displayed. Her hair was down for the first time Noah had ever seen, falling in dark waves past her shoulders. Diamond earrings caught the light. She looked devastating, like someone who could break hearts without trying. She saw him and smiled, a real smile, warm and genuine, and so at odds with her usual expression that Noah almost forgot this was fake. There you are, she said, walking toward him. I was starting to worry. And then she kissed him. It was just a brief touch of lips, a greeting between lovers who'd been apart for a day. But it sent electricity through Noah's entire nervous system. She tasted like mint and possibility. Her hand touched his cheek, gentle and possessive at once. When she pulled back, her eyes searched his face. Okay? She whispered, quiet enough that only he could hear. Noah's voice had abandoned him. He nodded. Vivian laced her fingers through his, exactly like she'd shown him in her office. Then let's do this. They walked into the dining room together, and Noah felt every eye turn toward them. The Ashford Room was full of advertising elite, creative directors, agency presidents, brand executives, people who knew Vivian, people who were now seeing her with someone new. The whispers started immediately. Vivian ignored them all, her head high, her hand steady in Noah's. She guided him to a large round table where several people were already seated. Noah recognized some faces from industry magazines, from company all-hands meetings. Everyone, this is Noah Carter, Vivian said, her voice carrying just enough warmth to make the introduction significant. Noah, you know David Hutchins from our strategy team, and this is Sarah Chen from Morrison Media, and she went around the table. Noah shook hands, smiled, tried to remember names while his brain screamed that he was in way over his head. They sat. Vivian positioned them so Noah was on her right, close enough that their shoulders touched. Under the table, she found his hand again, squeezed once. A message. You're doing fine. The dinner started. Wine was poured. Appetizers arrived. Conversation flowed around topics Noah could barely follow. Client portfolios, industry acquisitions, the politics of advertising awards. Vivian participated effortlessly, her brilliant mind on full display, while somehow also making it clear through small gestures that Noah was important to her. A hand on his arm when she laughed. A glance seeking his opinion. Her body angled toward his even when speaking to others. Noah played his part. He was attentive, but not fawning. He asked intelligent questions when appropriate. He let Vivian shine while making it clear through his gaze that he was mesmerized by her. And somewhere around the second course, Noah realized he wasn't entirely acting. Then Grant Maddox walked into the restaurant. Noah felt Vivian go rigid beside him. Her hand, which had been resting on his knee under the table, suddenly gripped hard enough to hurt. Grant looked exactly like he had in the bar. Tall, blonde, expensive suit, megawatt smile. But tonight, he wasn't alone. The woman on his arm was different from Friday's conquest, younger if possible, wearing a dress that was more suggestion than fabric. And Grant's eyes swept the room with predatory intent until they landed on Vivian's table. His smile widened. He was walking toward them. Vivian, Noah said quietly, leaning close. Look at me. She turned, her eyes wide with panic barely concealed. You're brilliant, Noah whispered. You're powerful. You're sitting here with people who respect you, at a table you earned through talent and hard work. And he's just a man who never deserved you. So breathe, and let me handle this. Something in Vivian's expression shifted. The panic receded, replaced by surprise, and then something fiercer. She nodded once. Grant reached their table just as Noah placed his hand on Vivian's cheek and leaned in to kiss her temple, a gesture of casual intimacy that said, "She's mine," without words. "Vivian," Grant said, his voice smooth as silk and twice as fake. "What a surprise!" Vivian turned, and the mask was perfect, cool, professional, utterly unbothered. "Grant, I didn't know you'd be here." "Neither did I until an hour ago. Last-minute invitation from the Morrison Media folks." He gestured to his date. "This is Amber." "Amber, this is Vivian Rowe, an old friend." "An ex," Vivian corrected pleasantly. "Let's be accurate. Grant and I were engaged. It didn't work out. These things happen." Grant's smile tightened. "Right, and you are?" He looked at Noah like he was an interesting insect. Noah stood, extending his hand with just enough confidence to be believable. "Noah Carter. Nice to meet you." "Noah works at my company," Vivian added. "Among other things." The way she said it, the small smile playing at her lips, suggested exactly what those other things were. Grant's handshake was aggressive, trying to assert dominance. Noah held firm, refused to wince. "How long has this been going on?" Grant asked, still smiling, but his eyes were cold. "Long enough," Vivian said before Noah could answer. She reached up, took Noah's hand, pulled him gently back to his seat. "We should let you get to your table, Grant. Enjoy your dinner." It was a dismissal, polite but absolute. Grant stood there for a moment too long, his date looking confused, clearly sensing tension she couldn't identify. Then he nodded once. "Of course. Good to see you, Vivian. You look well." "I am well," Vivian replied. "Better than I've been in years, actually." Grant walked away and Noah felt Vivian's whole body release tension. Under the table, her hand found his again, gripping tight. He squeezed back, a silent communication. "You did it." The rest of the dinner passed in a strange haze. Conversation continued, deals were discussed, industry gossip shared. But Noah was hyper-aware of Vivian beside him, the way she gradually relaxed, the way her smile became more genuine, the way she started to actually enjoy herself. Near the end of the meal, as dessert arrived and coffee was poured, Sarah Chen from Morrison Media leaned across the table toward Vivian. "I have to say, Vivian, I've never seen you look happier. Whatever you're doing, it's working." Vivian glanced at Noah, and the expression on her face made his chest ache. Because for just a second, she looked at him like this was real, like he was actually the reason for her happiness. "Thank you, Sarah," Vivian said softly. "I think I finally figured out what I was missing." The evening ended around 10. Goodbyes were exchanged, business cards handed out, promises made for future meetings. Grant had left earlier, pointedly without saying goodbye. Vivian and Noah walked out of the Ashford room together, her hand tucked into the crook of his arm. Outside, the night was clear and cold. Manhattan sparkled around them, all lights and possibility. "You were perfect," Vivian said once they were alone on the sidewalk. "Absolutely perfect. The kiss on the temple when Grant walked up? Inspired. Seemed like the right move." It was. He looked like he'd swallowed glass. She laughed, a sound of pure relief and exhilaration. "Did you see his face when I said I was better than I've been in years?" "I did." Pretty sure he wanted to throw his wine glass. Good. Vivian turned to face Noah fully, and in the streetlight she looked younger, freer, like a weight had been lifted. "Thank you. For tonight, for all of it, for making me feel like maybe I can actually get through this." "You were always going to get through this," Noah said. "You're the strongest person I know." "That's because you don't really know me." "I'm starting to." They stood there in the cold, and something passed between them, recognition, maybe, or understanding. The acknowledgement that the lines between fake and real were starting to blur in ways neither of them had anticipated. "I should go," Vivian said, but she didn't move. "Early meeting tomorrow." Right, of course. The car can take you home first. I can grab the subway, it's not far. Noah. Yeah? Vivian hesitated, her fingers still resting on his arm. This arrangement, it's working. Better than I expected. But we need to be careful about boundaries, about what's real and what's performance. Noah's heart sank, even though he knew she was right. Understood. I just don't want either of us to get confused or hurt. We won't, Noah said with a confidence he didn't feel. Vivian nodded, stepped back, creating distance. Good night, Noah. Good night, Vivian. He watched her walk to the waiting car, watched her climb inside without looking back. The car pulled away, taillights disappearing into Manhattan traffic. Noah stood alone on the sidewalk, his expensive suit feeling like a costume, the taste of Vivian's greeting kiss still on his lips. They'd pulled it off. They'd convinced everyone, including, Noah suspected, Grant, that they were a real couple. The plan was working. So why did Noah feel like he'd just lost something he'd never actually had? He turned and walked toward the subway, hands in his pockets, replaying every moment of the evening. The way Vivian had smiled at him, the warmth in her eyes when she'd introduced him, the genuine gratitude in her voice when she'd thanked him. Noah was in trouble. Because somewhere between playing the role and watching Vivian come alive, between the practice touches and the genuine moments, he'd started to forget this was fake. And that, he realized as he descended into the subway station, was the most dangerous thing of all. The subway rattled beneath Manhattan, and Noah sat among the late-night commuters trying to make sense of what he was feeling. His reflection in the dark window showed a man in an expensive suit who looked like he belonged in boardrooms and private cars, not on the F train heading to Brooklyn. He loosened his tie, ran his fingers through his hair, and tried to shake the memory of Vivian's lips against his temple. It had been a performance. All of it. The kiss, the touches, the way she'd looked at him across the dinner table like he mattered. He needed to remember that. But her hand trembling in his underneath the table, that had been real. The relief in her eyes when Grant walked away defeated, that had been real too. Noah's phone buzzed, a text from Marcus. Dude, where are you? It's almost 11. He typed back, long work thing, home soon. Another buzz, this time from Vivian. Thank you again for tonight. Sleep well. Noah stared at the message for a long time before responding, you too. He wanted to say more. Wanted to ask if she was okay, if she was home safe, if she felt even a fraction of the confusion currently tearing through his chest. Instead, he pocketed his phone and watched Brooklyn approach through the darkness. Marcus was still awake when Noah got home, sitting on their threadbare couch with a beer and Netflix playing on their ancient television. Work thing? Marcus said skeptically, taking in Noah's suit. Since when does work buy you Bergdorf suits? It's complicated. Everything with you this week has been complicated. Marcus paused the show. You okay? You look like you just survived something. Noah collapsed into the chair across from him, suddenly exhausted. I think I might have made a terrible mistake. What kind of mistake? The kind where you agree to help someone and then realize you're in way deeper than you planned. Marcus studied him. This is about Roe, isn't it? Whatever happened at that bar last week? Noah's silence was answer enough. Look, Marcus said carefully, I don't know what's going on between you two, and maybe I don't want to know. But that woman is a nuclear reactor. Beautiful, powerful, and if you get too close, she'll burn you to ash. Just be careful, yeah? Yeah, Noah said. Careful. That night, Noah dreamed of Vivian, of her hair down and her dress green as envy, and her smile genuine in ways it never was at work. He woke up Friday morning feeling like he'd crossed a line he couldn't uncross. At the office, everything resumed its normal rhythm. Vivian was back to being the ice queen, decimating a presentation before 9 a.m., her hair in its severe bun, her armor fully restored. When she passed Noah in the hallway, she gave him the same polite, distant nod she gave everyone else. No acknowledgement of Thursday night, no secret smiles or knowing glances. It was like the dinner had never happened. Noah told himself this was good, professional, exactly what they'd agreed on. By Tuesday, he'd almost convinced himself that Thursday had been an aberration, That the charity gala next week would be just another performance, nothing more. Then Vivian summoned him to her office again. It was late afternoon, the kind of gray November day where Manhattan looked like it was considering giving up on color entirely. Noah knocked on her door with the same nervous energy he'd had 2 weeks ago, though for entirely different reasons now. "Come in." Vivian stood at her window, silhouetted against the dying light. She'd kicked off her heels again, and without them she looked smaller somehow, more human. "Close the door," she said without turning around. Noah obeyed, his heart hammering stupidly. "We need to talk about the gala," Vivian said. "It's bigger than the dinner, more visibility, more press, more opportunity for things to go wrong. Okay? It's black tie. I'll have a tux sent to you by Wednesday. We'll arrive together this time. The car will pick you up at 7. The event starts at 8, but we'll be fashionably late, 9:15, maybe 9:30. She was all business, reciting details like battle plans, but she still hadn't turned around. "Grant will definitely be there," she continued. "He's on the board of the charity, which means we'll have to interact with him more than we did at dinner. Conversation, not just passing acknowledgement. Can you handle that?" "Of course." "I need you to be prepared for him to be cruel, to make implications about us, about you, about your motives. He'll try to get under your skin, to make you react." "I won't." "You say that now." Finally, Vivian turned. Her face was carefully neutral, but Noah was learning to read the small tells, the tension in her jaw, the way her fingers worried at her watch band. "Grant is very good at finding weaknesses. And if he senses that this isn't—" She stopped, frustration flickering across her features. "That this isn't real," Noah finished quietly. "Yes." They stood in silence for a moment, the unspoken truth hanging between them. That somewhere between the planning and the performance, between the practice touches and the genuine moments, the line between real and fake had started to blur, at least for Noah. He had no idea what Vivian felt, and he was terrified to find out. "We should practice," Vivian said abruptly. "Practice what?" "Being a couple. We have a week. We should spend some time together outside of preparation meetings. Build chemistry that reads as genuine." Noah's mouth went dry. "You want to go on fake dates? I want us to be comfortable with each other. Right now, you still look at me like I'm going to fire you at any moment. That needs to change before the gala." She walked to her desk, pulled out her phone, scrolled through her calendar with quick, efficient movements. "Tomorrow evening, 6 p.m. Meet me at my place in Brooklyn Heights. We'll have dinner, talk, practice being ourselves around each other. Thursday we'll do the same. Friday we can review our story one more time before the weekend. You want me to come to your house?" Noah tried to keep his voice steady. "Unless you'd prefer to keep meeting in my office at dawn, yes. I'll cook. We'll eat like normal people. We'll practice conversation that doesn't revolve around work or Grant or this arrangement. We'll build the kind of rapport that actual couples have." She said it all so clinically, like she was outlining a marketing strategy. But her fingers were still worrying at her watch. "Vivian," Noah said carefully, "are you sure that's a good idea?" "Why wouldn't it be?" "Because—" He struggled for the right words. "Because the more time we spend together, the more blurred this gets. And you said we needed to be careful about boundaries." Vivian's expression hardened. "I'm perfectly capable of maintaining boundaries. Are you saying you're not?" "No, I'm saying that spending intimate evenings at your house might make it harder to remember what's real and what's performance." "For you or for me?" The question hung in the air like a challenge. Noah met her gaze, saw something dangerous flickering there. Vulnerability wrapped in defensiveness, fear masquerading as control. "For both of us," he said quietly. Vivian turned away, her shoulders rigid. When she spoke again, her voice was softer. "You're right. It's a risk. But the bigger risk is showing up to the gala and having everyone see through us because we're too stiff, too rehearsed. I need this to be believable, Noah. I need Grant to see me happy and moved on and completely indifferent to his existence. And right now, we're not quite there yet." She was right. Noah knew she was right. Thursday's dinner had been good, but there had been moments of awkwardness, beats where they'd both been too aware of performing. "Okay," Noah said. "Wednesday through Friday, your place. We practice being real." Vivian nodded, some of the tension leaving her frame. "I'll text you the address." Wednesday evening found Noah standing outside a pristine brownstone in Brooklyn Heights, holding a bottle of wine he'd agonized over for 20 minutes at the store and feeling completely out of his depth. The neighborhood was the kind of beautiful that came with family money or serious success. Tree-lined streets, historic architecture, the kind of quiet that Manhattan had forgotten how to achieve. He checked the address 3 times before climbing the steps and ringing the bell. The woman who opened the door was not the Vivian he knew from work. Her hair was down, loose waves falling past her shoulders. She wore jeans, actual jeans, and a soft gray sweater that looked cashmere and expensive, but also comfortable. No makeup except a touch around her eyes. Bare feet. She looked younger, softer, completely, devastatingly beautiful in a way that made Noah forget how to breathe. "You brought wine," she said, smiling. "You didn't have to." "I didn't know what else to bring." Flowers seemed too much. Nothing seemed rude. "Wine is perfect. Come in." The interior of Vivian's brownstone was a revelation. Noah had expected something austere and modern, all sharp edges and minimalism. Instead, he found warmth. Hardwood floors covered with vintage rugs, built-in bookshelves stuffed with novels and biographies, art on the walls that looked collected rather than curated, a fireplace with photos on the mantel, a kitchen that actually looked used. "This is incredible," Noah said, following her through the house. "It's too big for one person," Vivian said, almost apologetically. "I bought it thinking Grant and I would fill it together. Now it's just me and about 4,000 square feet of regret." She led him to the kitchen, which was all butcher block counters and copper pots and windows looking out onto a small garden. Something smelled amazing: garlic, herbs, wine. "You're actually cooking," Noah observed. "I said I would. Did you think I was lying?" "I thought you'd have it catered and pretend." Vivian laughed, the sound genuine and unguarded. "I'm many things, Noah, but I'm not a liar about food. Cooking is one of the few things I do that has nothing to do with work or success or maintaining an image. It's just for me." She handed him a glass of wine, not the bottle he'd brought, but something older and probably more expensive from her collection. "Sit," she instructed, gesturing to a stool at the kitchen island. "Talk to me. Tell me something I don't know about you." Noah sat, watching her move around the kitchen with the same confidence she had in boardrooms. She stirred something on the stove, checked the oven, chopped fresh basil with quick, precise movements. "What do you want to know?" "Anything, everything. We know the facts about each other, but facts aren't intimacy. I need to know how you think, how you process things, what makes you laugh when no one's watching." Noah took a sip of wine, considering. "Okay. When I first moved to New York, I was so broke that I used to walk through Chelsea Market at lunchtime just to smell the food. I couldn't afford to buy anything, but I'd walk through and imagine what I'd order when I finally made it. It became this ritual. Every Friday, I'd walk through and pick one thing I'd buy someday." Vivian glanced at him, something soft in her expression. "Did you ever go back? After you could afford it?" "Yeah, about 6 months into my job at Sterling and Rowe. I bought the lobster roll I'd been dreaming about for 2 years. And? It was good. Not life-changing, but good." Noah smiled. The anticipation was better than the reality, which is probably a metaphor for something. For New York itself, maybe. Or ambition in general. Vivian plated their dinner, some kind of pasta with a cream sauce, perfectly seared scallops on top. The basil she'd chopped scattered over everything. It looked like something from a restaurant. We spend so much time chasing what we think will make us happy that we forget to notice whether we actually are happy. They ate at her dining table, which was smaller than the formal one Noah glimpsed in another room, clearly the one she actually used. The food was incredible, and Noah said so repeatedly until Vivian laughed and told him to stop. "You sound surprised that I can cook." "I am surprised. You're good at everything else. It seems unfair that you're good at this too." "I'm not good at everything." Name one thing you're bad at." Vivian was quiet for a moment, twirling pasta on her fork. "Relationships, apparently. Trusting people. Letting my guard down. Asking for help." She met his eyes. "Should I keep going?" The vulnerability in her voice made Noah's chest ache. "Those aren't things you're bad at. Those are things that are hard." Same result? Not really. Being bad at something means you lack the ability. These are things you've trained yourself not to do because the world punished you for them. Vivian set down her fork, studying him with an expression Noah couldn't quite read. How did you get so perceptive? Grew up quiet. Learn to watch instead of talk. You see a lot when you're not busy performing. Is that what I do? Perform? Isn't it what we all do? Noah leaned back in his chair. You perform the Ice Queen because it keeps people from seeing the parts of you that could get hurt. I perform the harmless creative because it keeps people from expecting too much. Marcus performs the cynic because optimism is scary. We're all just trying to protect ourselves. That's a bleak worldview. Or a realistic one. They finished dinner talking about everything and nothing. Books they'd read, movies they loved, places they wanted to travel but never had time for. Vivian told him about her mother, a literature professor who'd died too young and left Vivian with a love of old films and an inability to watch anything sad. Noah told her about his sister's wedding, how he'd been so focused on work he'd almost missed it, how that had been the moment he realized he was becoming someone he didn't like. The conversation flowed easier than it had any right to, punctuated by laughter and wine refills and the kind of comfortable silences that usually took months to build. Around 10, they moved to her living room. Vivian built a fire in the fireplace while Noah examined the photos on the mantel. Vivian as a child with her mother, both laughing. Vivian at her Yale graduation, looking fierce and proud. Vivian at various company events, always polished, always perfect. One photo was face down. "Grant," Vivian said, noticing where Noah's attention had landed. "I keep meaning to throw it away, but I haven't gotten around to it." "Why not?" She settled onto the couch, tucking her feet under her. "Because part of me is still angry, and if I throw it away, I'm admitting he doesn't matter anymore. Which means admitting I wasted 3 years on someone who never deserved them. Which means admitting I was wrong. And I hate being wrong." Noah sat beside her, careful to leave space between them. "You weren't wrong. He was. There's a difference." "Is there?" Vivian stared into the fire. "I'm supposed to be brilliant at reading people. It's literally my job, understanding what motivates them, what they want, what they'll respond to. And I completely missed that the man I was going to marry was a narcissistic cheater who saw me as a trophy instead of a person. Love makes us blind. It's not a character flaw. It's human nature." "Love," Vivian repeated bitterly. "I'm not even sure it was love. Maybe it was just convenience. Compatible ambitions, good optics. He was handsome and successful and everyone expected us to be together, so we were." "Did you ever actually want to marry him?" The question seemed to surprise her. She was quiet for a long time, the firelight casting shadows across her face. "I wanted to want to," she said finally. "I wanted to be the kind of woman who could have it all, the career, the relationship, the perfect life. But every time I imagined the wedding, all I could think about was how much work it would be, how many decisions I'd have to make, how many opinions I'd have to manage. It felt like another project to execute perfectly instead of something to be excited about. That should have been a sign. Yes, but I ignored it, because admitting I didn't want to marry him meant admitting that maybe I didn't want marriage at all, or maybe just not with him. And I'd already said yes, already announced it, already become half of a couple that everyone admired. Walking away would have meant disappointing people, causing gossip, looking unstable. She laughed, a hollow sound. So I stayed. Right up until the moment I caught him with someone else, and the decision was made for me. Even then, part of me was relieved. Is that terrible? It's honest, Noah said, which is rare and more valuable than terrible. Vivian turned to look at him, and in the firelight she looked impossibly beautiful and impossibly sad. "Why are you being so kind to me?" she asked softly. "I threatened your job. I'm using you to make my ex jealous. I've dragged you into my mess. You should hate me. I don't hate you." "What do you feel then?" It was the most dangerous question she could have asked. Noah knew he should deflect, should keep things light and professional. But sitting there in her living room with the fire warm and the wine making him honest, and Vivian looking at him like his answer actually mattered, he couldn't lie. "I feel like I'm finally seeing you," he said. "The real you, not the legend. And I like what I see. I like that you cook. I like that you can quote old movies. I like that you're angry at Grant instead of just sad because it means you know your worth. I like that you trusted me enough to let me help you, even though trusting people is hard for you." He paused, knowing he should stop but unable to. "And I feel like this arrangement we made is getting really complicated. Because I agreed to pretend to date you, but somewhere along the way I started to care. And I don't know if that's part of the performance or if it's real, and I think you don't know either, and that terrifies me." The silence that followed felt enormous. Vivian stared at him, her expression unreadable. Noah waited for her to laugh it off, to retreat behind her Ice Queen mask, to end the evening and the arrangement and possibly his employment. Instead, she reached out and took his hand. "It terrifies me too," she whispered. Her thumb traced circles on his palm, the gesture unconscious and intimate. Noah's heart hammered so hard he was sure she could hear it. "I haven't been honest," Vivian continued, "with you or myself. I told myself this was just practical, a solution to a problem. But that's not entirely true. The truth is, I like spending time with you. I like how you see me and aren't afraid of what you find. I like how you make me laugh. I like that you're here, in my house, making my too big brownstone feel less empty." She looked up, meeting his eyes. "And that's terrifying because this was supposed to be simple. Pretend for a few weeks, convince Grant I've moved on, end the arrangement. But nothing about this feels simple anymore." "No," Noah agreed. "It doesn't." They sat there, hands linked, the fire crackling, the city humming beyond the windows. Noah was acutely aware of every point of contact between them. Her fingers against his, her knee almost touching his, the scent of her perfume mixing with wood smoke. "What do we do?" Vivian asked. It was the most uncertain Noah had ever heard her sound, like she was asking him to navigate something she couldn't strategy her way through. "I don't know," Noah admitted. "Maybe we just see where this goes? We keep preparing for the gala, we keep spending time together, and we stop trying to label what this is. Let it be what it needs to be." "That's not a plan. That's chaos." "Maybe you need a little chaos." Vivian laughed, the sound breaking the tension. "I really don't. Chaos is my nightmare." "Then maybe you need controlled chaos. Chaos with good intentions." "Is that what you are? My controlled chaos?" "If you want me to be." Vivian squeezed his hand, then released it, creating distance again. But this time it felt less like retreat and more like self-preservation. "It's late," she said. "You should probably go." Noah stood, knowing she was right, but not wanting to leave. "Same time tomorrow?" "Yes, but maybe less wine. We're getting too honest." "Is that bad?" "I don't know yet." Vivian walked him to the door, and they stood in the entryway in a moment that felt suspended. Noah wanted to kiss her, wanted to close the distance between them and find out if her lips tasted like wine and possibility, if the spark he felt was one-sided or mutual. But he didn't. Because rushing this, whatever this was, felt like the surest way to destroy it. "Good night, Vivian," he said instead. "Good night, Noah." He made it 3 steps down her brownstone stairs before she called his name. "Yeah? Thank you. For dinner, for listening, for not making this weird." "It is weird," Noah said, smiling, "but in a good way." Thursday night was easier and harder at the same time. Easier because they'd broken the ice, established that whatever was happening between them was mutual and real. Harder because that knowledge sat between them like a live wire, dangerous and impossible to ignore. They cooked together this time, Vivian teaching Noah how to make proper risotto while they talked about their worst first jobs and most embarrassing moments. They laughed until wine came out of Noah's nose, which made Vivian laugh even harder, which somehow led to them sitting on her kitchen floor at midnight eating gelato straight from the container and debating whether Die Hard was a Christmas movie. "It objectively is," Noah insisted. "It objectively is not. Christmas setting does not equal Christmas movie. By that logic, It's a Wonderful Life isn't a Christmas movie. That's completely different, and you know it." They didn't touch beyond accidental contact, didn't acknowledge the tension that hummed between them, but it was there, constant and undeniable. Friday evening, they finally practiced for the gala. Vivian wore a dress, midnight blue, elegant, stunning, and Noah wore the tuxedo that had been delivered that afternoon. They stood in her living room and practiced walking together, the way Noah should place his hand on her lower back, how close they should stand during conversations. "Closer," Vivian said. "We're supposed to be intimate. This looks like we're polite strangers." Noah stepped closer until he could feel the heat of her body through the thin fabric of her dress. "Better?" "Better." Her voice had gone slightly breathless. They practiced dancing because there would be dancing at the gala. Vivian pulled up a playlist of jazz standards on her phone, and they moved through her living room in a slow waltz that felt more dangerous than any boardroom negotiation Noah had ever witnessed. "You're a good dancer," Vivian murmured, her hand resting on his shoulder. "My mom made me take lessons in high school. I hated it then. I'm grateful now." "Why?" "Because I get to hold you," Noah said honestly. Vivian missed a step, stumbled slightly. Noah caught her, and suddenly they were standing still in the middle of her living room, their faces inches apart, Billie Holiday crooning about love and heartbreak from the speakers. "Noah," Vivian whispered, we need to." "I know." But neither of them moved. The song changed. Something slower, sadder, more intimate. Noah's hand was still at Vivian's waist, hers still on his shoulder. They swayed slightly, not quite dancing, not quite standing still. "At the gala," Vivian said, her voice quiet. "If we dance like this, people will know." "Know what?" "That it's real, that we're not pretending." "Would that be so bad?" Vivian closed her eyes. "Yes. Because when this ends, when it inevitably ends, everyone will know that too. And I can't be the woman who fell for her employee, who let her guard down, who got hurt again. I can't give people that ammunition." "Who says it has to end?" "Everything ends, Noah, especially things that feel this good." The sadness in her voice broke something in Noah's chest. He wanted to argue, to tell her she was wrong, that they could make this work. But he was 27 years old and she was his CEO, and they lived in different worlds. Even if the feeling between them was real, the obstacles were insurmountable. "Then let's not think about endings," Noah said. "Let's just think about tomorrow night. One gala, one performance. We'll figure out the rest later." Vivian opened her eyes, and Noah saw fear there, and hope, and resignation all mixed together. "Okay," she whispered. "One night." She leaned up, and Noah held his breath, certain she was going to kiss him. Instead, she rested her forehead against his, and they stood there breathing the same air, sharing the same impossible moment. "You should go," Vivian said finally. "I should," Noah agreed. But it took them another 5 minutes to actually separate, another 3 for Noah to gather his things, another 2 to say goodbye at the door. Outside, the November night was brutal and cold. Noah walked to the subway with his hands in his pockets and his mind racing. 24 hours until the gala. 24 hours until he and Vivian would walk into a room full of industry elite and pretend their relationship was simple, uncomplicated, just another romance in a city full of them. 24 hours until he'd have to dance with her in public and pretend his heart wasn't breaking with how much he wanted it all to be real. Noah's phone buzzed as he reached the subway entrance. A text from Vivian. "I forgot to tell you, the car picks you up at 7 tomorrow. Don't be late." He started to type back a simple acknowledgement, then deleted it and wrote instead, "I can't wait." 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Finally, "Me neither." Noah stood on the street reading those 2 words over and over, trying to decode them, to understand if they meant what he hoped they meant. Then he pocketed his phone and descended into the subway, Saturday night looming ahead like a promise and a threat wrapped into one perfectly formal evening. Whatever happened at the gala, Noah knew one thing with absolute certainty. There would be no going back to simple after this. No returning to boss and employee, to ice queen and junior creative, to people who existed in separate orbits. They'd crossed too many lines, shared too many truths, gotten too close to the fire. And tomorrow night, in front of everyone who mattered, they'd have to pretend none of it was burning them alive. Saturday arrived with the kind of crystalline November clarity that made Manhattan look like it was posing for postcards. Noah spent the morning trying to distract himself with errands, laundry, grocery shopping, anything to keep his hands busy and his mind from spiraling into anxiety about the evening ahead. Marcus had left early for a weekend trip to Philadelphia, which meant Noah had the apartment to himself and far too much time to overthink everything. By 3 p.m., he'd reorganized his closet twice and deep-cleaned the bathroom. By 4, he was pacing. By 5, he was in the shower letting scalding water wash away the nervousness that felt like it had taken up permanent residence in his chest. The tuxedo hung on his closet door, perfect and expensive and completely surreal. Noah touched the fabric, still half convinced this was an elaborate dream. That he'd wake up and it would be a normal Monday, and Vivian Rowe would still be the untouchable ice queen, and he'd still be the invisible junior creative. But the tuxedo was real. The past 3 weeks were real. And whatever was happening between him and Vivian, that terrifying, exhilarating, impossible thing, that was real too. His phone buzzed at 6:30. Cars downstairs. Noah gave himself one last look in the mirror. The man staring back looked confident, polished, like someone who belonged at charity galas and on the arm of powerful women. He tried to believe it. The car ride through Manhattan felt both endless and too short. Noah watched the city transform around him as they moved from his neighborhood in Brooklyn through progressively wealthier areas until they pulled up in front of the Plaza Hotel. The gala was being held in the Grand Ballroom, and even from outside, Noah could see the spectacle of it. People in evening gowns and tuxedos ascending the steps, photographers clustered at the entrance, the kind of opulence that made his Midwestern roots feel impossibly far away. The driver opened his door, and Noah stepped out into the cold evening air and the camera flashes and the overwhelming sense that he was about to walk into something that would change everything. Vivian was waiting just inside the entrance, and the sight of her stopped Noah's heart. She wore crimson, a floor-length gown that was somehow both elegant and devastating, with a neckline that suggested everything and revealed nothing. Her hair was up in an intricate arrangement that must have taken hours, with small crystals woven through the dark strands that caught the light when she moved. Diamond earrings, diamond bracelet, diamond everything. She looked like royalty, like power incarnate, like every fantasy Noah had never let himself have. When she saw him, her expression transformed. The cool, professional mask melted into something warm and genuine, and so beautiful it made Noah's throat tight. "Hi," she said softly. "Hi, yourself?" Noah walked to her, suddenly not nervous at all, because this was Vivian. His Vivian, who cooked risotto and debated Christmas movies and trusted him with her vulnerability. "You look incredible. You clean up pretty well yourself." She reached up, adjusted his bow tie with familiar ease. "Ready?" "As I'll ever be." Vivian took his arm, her fingers cool against his sleeve, and together they walked into the grand ballroom. The space was magnificent. Soaring ceilings, massive chandeliers, round tables draped in white and gold surrounding a polished dance floor. Hundreds of people milled about in formal wear, the air thick with expensive perfume and expensive conversation. A string quartet played in one corner while waiters circulated with champagne and hors d'oeuvres that probably cost more than Noah's monthly rent. Every eye turned toward them as they entered. Noah felt the weight of those gazes, curious, assessing, calculating. He heard the whispers start immediately, saw the heads turning to get a better look at Vivian Rowe's mysterious date. But Vivian held her head high, her hand steady on Noah's arm, completely unbothered by the attention. She guided him through the crowd with easy confidence, stopping to greet people, introducing Noah with warmth that suggested he was important to her. "Vivian, darling," a woman in emerald green gushed, air-kissing both of Vivian's cheeks. "You look absolutely radiant. And who is this handsome young man?" "This is Noah Carter," Vivian said, and the way she said his name with affection, with pride, made Noah's chest warm. "Noah, this is Patricia Wentworth. She sits on the board of directors for the charity." Noah shook hands, smiled, made appropriate small talk. He fell into the role easily, channeling every lesson Vivian had taught him about navigating these events. Be charming, but not obsequious, intelligent but not pretentious, attentive to Vivian without being clingy. They worked the room together, a perfect team. Vivian would engage in conversation about business or charity initiatives, and Noah would add thoughtful comments or ask perceptive questions. When someone made Vivian laugh, Noah's hand would find the small of her back. When Vivian introduced him, her fingers would lace through his. To anyone watching, they looked like a couple completely in sync, comfortable with each other, happy. And the terrifying truth was, they weren't acting. Around 8:30, they found their assigned table. Vivian had arranged for them to sit with several friendly colleagues from Sterling and Rowe and their partners, a strategic choice that meant allies rather than interrogators. Dinner was served, multiple courses that Noah barely tasted, too aware of Vivian beside him, of her hand occasionally resting on his knee under the table, of the way she'd lean close to whisper commentary about various attendees that made him fight to keep from laughing out loud. "See the man in the terrible toupee by the bar?" she murmured. "That's Richard Hastings. 3 wives, 4 bankruptcies, and somehow still convinced he's the smartest person in every room. The toupee isn't helping his case. No, it is not." The evening felt almost normal, almost like they were actually just a couple enjoying an event together. Noah let himself sink into the fantasy, let himself forget about Grant and the arrangement and all the complications waiting to destroy this perfect bubble. Then, between the main course and dessert, Grant Maddox appeared at their table. He looked different than he had at the dinner, sharper somehow, more predatory. He wore his tuxedo-like armor, and his smile was all calculated charm and underlying cruelty. The woman on his arm tonight was a brunette, younger than his previous dates, looking uncomfortable in a dress that was slightly too tight. "Vivian," Grant said, his voice carrying across the table. "What a coincidence. We keep running into each other." Vivian's hand tightened on Noah's leg, but her expression remained serene. "Not much of a coincidence at an industry event, Grant." "Hello, Madison," she addressed Grant's date with genuine warmth. "That color is lovely on you." The kindness in Vivian's voice, addressing the girl who was clearly just another of Grant's props, made Noah love her a little bit more. Grant's smile tightened. "I don't believe we've been properly introduced," he said, turning his attention to Noah. "Grant Maddox. And you're the junior creative, correct? I remember from the dinner." The dismissal in his tone was deliberate. Junior creative. Not boyfriend, not partner, not even Noah. Just a job title meant to minimize. Noah stood, meeting Grant's gaze with steady confidence. "Noah Carter. And yes, I work at Sterling and Rowe, among other things." He let the implication hang, making it clear that his relationship with Vivian transcended professional boundaries. Grant's eyes narrowed. How convenient, dating the boss. That must be quite the career boost. "Grant," Vivian said sharply, ice creeping into her voice. "What? I'm just making an observation. It's an unusual dynamic, you have to admit. The CEO and the junior employee. People might wonder about the power imbalance, about motivations." The insult was carefully crafted, questioning Noah's integrity while implying Vivian was either abusing her power or being taken advantage of. The rest of the table had gone silent, watching the confrontation with varying degrees of discomfort and fascination. Noah felt anger rising in his chest, but Vivian's hand squeezed his leg once, a warning, a request. "Don't engage, don't give him what he wants." "The only thing people should wonder about," Vivian said, her voice calm but carrying an edge that could cut glass, "is why you're so invested in my personal life when you've moved on so thoroughly yourself. Don't you have better things to discuss, like your company's recent loss of the Meridian account?" It was a perfect strike. Professional, devastating, and completely public. Grant's face flushed. "That's industry confidential." "It's industry news as of yesterday," Vivian countered smoothly. "Perhaps you should spend less time concerning yourself with my relationships and more time managing your own professional reputation." The nearby tables had started to notice the exchange. Heads were turning. Grant realized he was losing the confrontation and shifted tactics, turning his charm on Noah instead. "You seem like a bright young man, Noah. Can I give you some advice? Be careful. Vivian has a way of making people feel special, like they're the center of her world, right up until they're not useful anymore. Then she's remarkably adept at cutting them loose." "That's enough," Vivian said, standing up. Her voice was still controlled, but Noah could see the fury in her eyes. "I'm just trying to help. You deserve to know what you're getting into. She'll burn through you the same way she burns through everyone. It's what she does. Work comes first, always. Eventually, you'll realize you're just another item on her to-do list. You have no idea what you're talking about, Noah interrupted, his own anger finally breaking through. You're projecting your own failures onto Vivian because you can't stand that she's better off without you, that she's happy, that she found someone who actually values her instead of treating her like a trophy. The words came out sharper than Noah intended, fueled by weeks of watching Vivian hurt, of seeing the damage Grant had done, of witnessing the walls she'd had to build to protect herself from men exactly like this. Grant's expression darkened. Careful, kid. You're out of your league here. No, Noah said, stepping closer to Grant, close enough that he had to look up slightly to meet the older man's eyes. You're out of yours. You lost the best thing that ever happened to you, and instead of accepting that gracefully, you're making a fool of yourself trying to save face. Everyone here can see it, including your date, who looks like she'd rather be anywhere else. Madison, Grant's date, had indeed gone pale, looking between Grant and Noah with growing horror. We're leaving, Grant said tightly, grabbing Madison's arm. Good idea, Vivian said. Enjoy your evening. Grant stalked away, practically dragging Madison behind him. The tables around them slowly returned to their own conversations, though Noah could feel the gossip spreading like wildfire through the ballroom. Noah sat down heavily, his heart racing. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have. That was perfect, Vivian said quietly. Her hand found his under the table, gripping tight. Absolutely perfect. Thank you. He was being cruel to you. He usually is. But you defended me. You stood up to him. No one's done that for me in a very long time. The gratitude in her voice made Noah's anger dissolve into something softer, warmer. He turned his hand over, lacing his fingers through hers properly. Someone should have done it a long time ago. The rest of dinner passed in a blur. Colleagues from their table complimented Noah on his composure, sympathized with Vivian about Grant's behavior, and generally treated the confrontation like a spectator sport they'd enjoyed watching. After dessert, the dancing began. The string quartet was replaced by a full orchestra, and couples began moving onto the floor in elegant waltzes and foxtrots. Dance with me, Vivian said, standing and extending her hand. Noah took it, let her lead him onto the floor. The orchestra was playing something slow and romantic, and as Noah pulled Vivian into his arms, hand at her waist, her hand on his shoulder, their other hands clasped, he felt like they were the only two people in the entire ballroom. They moved together with the easy synchronicity they'd practiced in her living room, but there was an added layer now, an awareness, an acknowledgement of everything that had been building between them for weeks. You were incredible tonight, Vivian murmured, her lips close to his ear. Standing up to Grant like that. You weren't intimidated at all. I was terrified, Noah admitted, but I was more angry than terrified. He had no right to speak to you that way. He never did. But he always thought he did. That was part of the problem. They swayed to the music, and Noah was hyper-aware of every point of contact, her hand in his, her body close to his, the scent of her perfume mixing with the champagne and flowers, and the general opulence of the evening. Vivian, Noah said quietly. This thing between us. It's not fake anymore, you know that, right? Vivian pulled back just enough to meet his eyes. In the soft light of the ballroom, with her face tilted up toward his, she looked vulnerable and beautiful and terrified. I know, she whispered. So what do we do about it? I don't know. Noah, there are so many complications. The company, the age difference, what people will say. I don't care what people say. You should. You have a career to protect. So do you. But you took a chance on this arrangement. Take a chance on this being real. Vivian closed her eyes, and Noah watched emotions play across her face. Fear, hope, desire, resignation. When she opened them again, there were tears threatening to spill. What if we try and it falls apart? What if I hurt you? What if you realize I'm exactly what Grant said? Too focused on work, too cold, too damaged. You're not damaged. You're careful. There's a difference. Noah pulled her closer. Their bodies flush now, swaying to music that felt like it was playing just for them. And if it falls apart, at least we tried. At least we were brave enough to take the risk. I'm not brave. You're the bravest person I know. Vivian laughed, but it came out choked. You barely know me. I know enough. I know you cook when you're stressed. I know you quote old movies when you think no one's paying attention. I know you run 5 miles every morning because it's the only time your brain quiets down. I know you're terrified of being vulnerable, but you let me in anyway. I know you're brilliant and fierce and kind even when you pretend not to be. Noah, I know I'm falling for you, Noah finished quietly. And I think you're falling for me too. And that terrifies both of us, but maybe that's okay. Maybe being terrified means it matters. The song was ending. Around them, couples were applauding the orchestra, preparing for the next dance. But Vivian and Noah stood still in the middle of the floor, locked in their own world. Come home with me tonight, Vivian said suddenly. Not just to talk, to figure this out. I don't want to do this here, in front of everyone. I need to be somewhere private, somewhere real. Noah's heart hammered. Okay. They made their excuses to their table mates, citing an early morning commitment. No one questioned it. They probably assumed the young couple was eager to be alone for entirely different reasons, which Noah supposed wasn't entirely wrong. The car ride to Brooklyn Heights was silent but charged. Vivian's hand stayed clasped in Noah's the entire time, like she was afraid if she let go, the spell would break. Noah traced patterns on her palm with his thumb, a soothing gesture that seemed to calm them both. Inside Vivian's brownstone, she kicked off her heels immediately, the formal facade cracking. She poured them both wine with shaking hands, then stood in her living room looking lost in her own house. I don't know how to do this, she admitted. I don't know how to let someone in. The last time I did, it destroyed me. Noah set down his wine, walked to her, took her face gently in his hands. I'm not Grant. I'm not going to hurt you like that. You can't promise that. You're right. I can't. But I can promise that I'll try, that I'll be honest, that I see you, really see you, and I'm not running away. Vivian's eyes searched his face, looking for lies, for cracks, for any sign that this was too good to be true. Whatever she saw must have satisfied her because she leaned forward and kissed him. It was nothing like the brief greeting kiss at the restaurant. This was real and deep and desperate, weeks of tension and denied feelings pouring out in a single moment. Noah's hand slid into her hair, careful of the crystals and pins, while Vivian's fingers gripped his tuxedo jacket like an anchor. They kissed until they were both breathless, until the world narrowed to just the two of them, until nothing else mattered except this moment and this feeling and this impossible, wonderful thing blooming between them. When they finally broke apart, Vivian was crying. I'm so scared, she whispered against his lips. Me too. What if this ruins everything? What if it makes everything better? They stood there in her living room, holding each other, and Noah felt like they were standing on the edge of something monumental, a choice that would change both their lives irrevocably. Stay tonight, Vivian said. Just stay. We don't have to decide anything right now. Just don't leave. So Noah stayed. They changed out of their formal wear into comfortable clothes, Vivian lending him sweatpants and a t-shirt that hung loose on his frame. They curled up on her couch with wine and old movies playing on the television, barely watching, mostly just existing in each other's presence. Somewhere around 3 a.m., they fell asleep tangled together, Vivian's head on Noah's chest, his arms around her, both of them peaceful in a way neither had been in weeks. Noah woke to sunlight streaming through unfamiliar windows and the smell of coffee. He sat up, disoriented, taking in Vivian's living room in daylight. The throw blanket someone, Vivian probably, had draped over him during the night, the 2 empty wine glasses on the coffee table, the suit jacket and crimson gown draped over the chair like evidence of the night before. Good morning, Vivian said from the doorway. She changed into yoga pants and a sweatshirt, her hair pulled back in a messy bun, no makeup. She looked young and beautiful and slightly nervous. Coffee? Please. They sat at her kitchen island drinking coffee in comfortable silence, and Noah marveled at how natural this felt. Like they'd done this 100 times before. Like waking up in Vivian's house was the most normal thing in the world. Last night, Vivian started. Was perfect, Noah finished. Was complicated, Vivian corrected gently. Noah, I meant what I said, about being scared, about not knowing how to do this. We need to talk about the reality of what this means, the complications. Okay, let's talk. Vivian set down her coffee cup, her expression serious. First, there's the company. We have policies about workplace relationships, especially between different levels of hierarchy. If we do this, if we make this real, we have to disclose it to HR. There will be paperwork, possibly restructuring to avoid conflicts of interest. You might have to change departments or reporting structures. I can do that. Second, there's the optics. People will talk. Some will say you're using me for career advancement. Some will say I'm having a midlife crisis. Some will call it inappropriate regardless of what the policy says. Can you handle that? Can you handle being known as the CEO's boyfriend instead of just Noah Carter, talented creative? Noah considered this. It wasn't an idle question. Vivian was asking if he could handle losing his professional identity to their relationship. I can handle it if you can, Noah said, because they'll say worse about you, that you're unprofessional, that you're abusing your power, that you're emotionally compromised. Can you handle that? Vivian flinched. I've handled worse. That's not what I asked. She was quiet for a long moment, staring into her coffee like it held answers. I don't know, she admitted finally. I've spent 20 years building my reputation, being taken seriously in an industry that wanted to sideline me, proving I deserved every success. If we do this, some people will use it to discredit everything I've accomplished. They'll say, I'm just like every other woman who lets emotions compromise her judgment. But some people will always find reasons to discredit successful women, Noah pointed out. You can't live your life according to their limitations. I know, but knowing that intellectually and actually facing it are different things. So we face it together. Vivian looked up, met his eyes. You make it sound simple. Maybe it is simple. Maybe we're overcomplicating it because we're both terrified of getting hurt. I am terrified of getting hurt. Me too, but I'm more terrified of walking away from this because it's complicated. Of spending the rest of my life wondering what could have been if we'd just been brave enough to try. Vivian smiled, but it was sad around the edges. When did you get so wise? I'm not wise. I'm just stupidly in love with you and willing to fight for it. The words hung in the air between them. Noah hadn't meant to say it, not like that, not so soon, but now it was out there, honest and raw and impossible to take back. Vivian's eyes widened. Noah, I know it's fast. I know we've only known each other like this for a few weeks, but I can't pretend anymore. I love you, Vivian, the real you, not the ice queen or the CEO or the legend, the woman who dances in her living room and cries at old movies and makes the best risotto I've ever tasted. That's who I'm in love with. Vivian stood up abruptly, walked to the window, her back to Noah. He watched her shoulders rise and fall with deep breaths, watched her arms wrap around herself like she was holding herself together. I can't say it back, she said quietly. Not yet. Not because I don't feel it, but because I'm terrified that if I say it, it becomes real. And real things can be destroyed. Real things can hurt you. They can also make you happy. For how long? Until you realize what everyone else knows, that I'm difficult and demanding and married to my work? Until you get tired of coming second to my career, until you meet someone your own age who doesn't have all my baggage? Noah stood, walked to her, turned her to face him. Stop borrowing trouble from the future. Stop assuming the worst because one person treated you badly. I'm not Grant. I'm not going to get bored or resentful or cheat. I'm just going to love you if you'll let me. Tears spilled down Vivian's cheeks. I want to let you. I want to believe this can work. But I'm so scared, Noah. I'm so scared of losing myself in this, of losing you, of losing everything if it all falls apart. Then we'll be scared together, but we'll also be happy together. We'll figure it out as we go. Vivian kissed him then, desperate and grateful and terrified all at once. When they broke apart, she rested her forehead against his. Okay, she whispered. Okay. We try. We make this real. We face whatever comes together. Relief flooded through Noah's chest. Yeah? Yeah. They spent Sunday tangled up in each other, talking, planning, navigating the logistics of making their relationship official. Monday morning, they would meet with HR together. They would fill out the disclosure forms. Noah would transfer to a different creative team, with a different supervisor to eliminate the direct reporting relationship. They would be transparent, professional, and unapologetic about their relationship. It felt terrifying and exhilarating and right. That night, as Noah finally headed home to his own apartment, Vivian walked him to the door. "Thank you," she said, "for being patient with me, for not giving up when I was difficult. You're not difficult, you're careful, and you have every right to be. I'll see you tomorrow." "At the office." "At the office," Noah confirmed, then quieter. "I love you." Vivian's breath caught. She kissed him softly, then pulled back with tears in her eyes. "I'm getting there," she whispered. "I promise, I'm getting there." It was enough. For now, it was enough. Noah walked home through Brooklyn with his hands in his pockets and hope blooming warm in his chest. They were going to try. They were going to make this real. They were going to face whatever complications came their way together. He had no idea that the complications were about to become catastrophic. Monday morning, Noah arrived at Sterling and Rowe early, nervous but determined. He and Vivian had agreed to meet with HR at 9 a.m. The disclosure, the restructuring, it would all be official by lunchtime. But when Noah got to his desk, he found Marcus waiting for him with a laptop and an expression that made Noah's stomach drop. "We need to talk," Marcus said grimly, "and you're not going to like it." On the screen was an email, anonymous, sent to the entire company board of directors. And attached to it were photos from the gala, photos of Noah and Vivian dancing, photos of them holding hands, photos of them kissing outside the plaza. And the email subject line read, "Inappropriate relationship between CEO and subordinate employee. Investigation required." Noah felt the bottom drop out of his world. Someone had been watching them. Someone had documented their relationship, and someone had just weaponized it against them both. The trap had sprung, and Noah had no idea how they were going to survive it. Noah stared at the laptop screen, his vision blurring around the edges as his brain struggled to process what he was seeing. The photos were professional quality, too professional to be random phone shots from other gala attendees. Someone had hired a photographer. Someone had planned this. "When did this go out?" Noah asked, his voice hollow. "Around 7 this morning. The board's already calling an emergency meeting. HR sent out a summons for both you and Vivian at 10 a.m. Marcus's face was grim. "Noah, this is bad. Really bad. They're calling it an ethics violation, potential abuse of power, failure to disclose a conflict of interest. The email specifically mentions that you're a subordinate employee and that this relationship could constitute—" "I know what it constitutes," Noah interrupted. His hands were shaking. "We were going to disclose today. We had an appointment with HR at 9. We were doing everything right. Except someone didn't want to give you that chance." Marcus closed the laptop. "Any idea who?" Noah's mind immediately went to Grant. It had to be Grant. The timing was too perfect. The weekend after the gala where Noah had publicly defended Vivian, where Grant had looked like a fool in front of his peers. This was revenge, pure and simple. But proving it was another matter entirely. "I need to talk to Vivian," Noah said, standing up so fast his chair rolled backward. "Noah, wait. Think about this. If you go to her office right now, you're just giving them more ammunition. You need to be strategic." "I need to make sure she's okay." Noah's phone buzzed, a text from Vivian. "Don't come to my office, don't react, meet me at 9:45 in conference room B. We handle this together." Even in crisis, she was thinking strategically. Even ambushed, she was planning their defense. Noah spent the next 2 hours at his desk trying to look normal while his world imploded around him. Colleagues whispered and stared. Some looked sympathetic, others scandalized, most just curious to see how this drama would unfold. The creative department buzzed with speculation. How long had the affair been going on? Was it consensual? Was Noah using Vivian, or was she using him? Would they both be fired? At 9:40, Noah made his way to conference room B. It was a small meeting space tucked away from the main floor, rarely used. Vivian was already there, standing at the window with her back to the door. She'd dressed for battle, a black suit that looked like armor, her hair in its most severe bun, heels that added 3 inches to her height. But when she turned and saw Noah, her mask cracked. "Are you okay?" she asked immediately, crossing to him. "Am I okay? Vivian, you're the one who's—" This email went to the board. Your board. They're going to crucify you for this. They're going to try. Vivian's jaw set. But I didn't build this company from nothing by rolling over when threatened. Sit down. We need to prepare. They sat across from each other at the small conference table, and Vivian pulled out a legal pad covered in her neat handwriting. She'd clearly been up for hours, planning. The photos were taken by a professional, she said without preamble. I've already had my assistant contact the plaza's event coordinator. There was no official photographer hired for candid shots outside the venue, which means someone hired a private photographer specifically to document us. Grant. Almost certainly, though proving it will be difficult. The email was sent from an anonymous account, routed through multiple servers. My IT team is working on tracing it, but I'm not optimistic. What are they going to ask us in the meeting? Vivian met his eyes. They're going to ask when the relationship started. They're going to ask if it's consensual. They're going to ask if I've shown you any preferential treatment, promotions, raises, special assignments. They're going to ask if you felt pressured or coerced at any point. None of that happened. We haven't even been actually together until Saturday night. Before that, it was just what? Vivian's expression was unreadable. How do we explain the arrangement without making it sound worse? That I asked you to pretend to be my boyfriend to make my ex jealous? That sounds exactly like an abuse of power. Noah hadn't thought of that. The truth? That Vivian had initially threatened his job in a moment of panic, that they'd agreed to a fake relationship that became real, sounded damning when stripped of context and emotion. We tell them the truth, Noah said firmly. All of it. The bar, Grant, the arrangement, everything. We tell them that yes, it started in a complicated way, but that we addressed it. We fell for each other genuinely, and we were literally coming to HR this morning to disclose when this email went out. We have nothing to hide. The truth makes me look desperate and unstable. It makes you look naive or opportunistic, depending on how they want to spin it. Then let them spin it. We know what actually happened. We know our intentions were good, even if the execution was messy. Vivian smiled sadly. You're so optimistic. It's one of the things I love about you. The words hung in the air. Vivian's eyes widened slightly, like she hadn't meant to say it out loud. You love me? Noah asked quietly. Vivian looked away, her composure fracturing. I was getting there. I told you I was getting there. But now everything's falling apart, and I don't know if we'll survive this. And I can't lose you and my company in the same week, Noah. I can't. Noah stood, walked around the table, pulled Vivian to her feet and into his arms. She resisted for a second, then collapsed against him, her careful control shattering. We're going to survive this, Noah said into her hair. We're going to walk into that meeting, tell the truth, and remind them that you've given 20 years to this company, that you're the best CEO they could possibly have, that our relationship doesn't change your competence or integrity. What about your career? If they force you out, then I'll find another job. There are other agencies, but there's only one you. Vivian pulled back, her eyes red but fierce. I won't let you sacrifice your career for me, and I won't let you sacrifice yourself to protect mine. We're in this together, remember? Whatever happens, we face it together. At exactly 10 a.m., they walked into the main conference room together. The space was dominated by a long glass table where 5 board members sat in judgment, 3 men and 2 women, all looking stern and uncomfortable. The head of HR, Linda Morrison, sat at one end with a thick folder of documents. A lawyer Noah didn't recognize sat at the other end, presumably there to protect the company's interests. Vivian took her seat at the table with perfect composure, every inch the CEO. Noah sat beside her, trying to project confidence he didn't feel. Thank you for meeting with us on such short notice, Linda Morrison began. She was a woman in her 50s with kind eyes that currently held no warmth. I'm sure you both understand the seriousness of this situation. We do, Vivian said calmly, though I'd like to note that Noah and I were scheduled to meet with your office at 9 a.m. this morning to voluntarily disclose our relationship. The anonymous email preempted our disclosure by approximately 2 hours. This clearly surprised the board members. Linda consulted her notes. You had a scheduled appointment? Yes, Friday afternoon. I called your office and scheduled it. You can verify with your assistant. Noah and I became aware that our relationship had progressed beyond professional boundaries, and we wanted to handle the disclosure properly and transparently. When did this relationship begin? One of the board members asked, Robert Chen, a venture capitalist with a reputation for ruthlessness. Vivian and Noah exchanged a glance. This was it. The moment where they either lied to protect themselves or told the truth and accepted the consequences. That's complicated, Vivian said. The full truth is complicated and in some ways unflattering to me. But I'm going to tell you anyway because transparency is more important than my pride. She proceeded to lay out everything, the bar, Grant's harassment, her moment of panic when she'd grabbed Noah and said words she regretted, the fake dating arrangement they'd made to help Vivian navigate social situations where Grant would be present, the gradual evolution from performance to genuine feeling, the decision this weekend to make the relationship real, their plan to disclose this morning. Noah watched the board members' faces as Vivian spoke. Some looked skeptical, others sympathetic. Robert Chen's expression remained unreadable. So you're saying, Chen said when Vivian finished, that you threatened Mr. Carter's employment to coerce him into pretending to be your boyfriend? In a moment of panic and poor judgment, yes. I apologized immediately and offered him multiple opportunities to withdraw from the arrangement without consequences. He chose to help me of his own volition. Mr. Carter, Linda Morrison turned to Noah. Is that accurate? Did you feel you had a choice in this arrangement? Noah sat up straighter. Ms. Rowe's initial request was made in a moment of crisis. But yes, I had a choice. She made it clear multiple times that I could walk away. I chose to stay because I saw someone I respected in genuine distress and I wanted to help. The fact that we developed real feelings for each other was unexpected, but genuine. Did Ms. Rowe show you any preferential treatment during this time? The lawyer asked. Promotions, raises, special assignments? No, actually, she rejected 3 of my campaign pitches in the past month. If anything, she was harder on me than usual to avoid any appearance of favoritism. Can anyone corroborate this arrangement? Another board member asked. Sarah Winters, one of the few people who'd always seemed to support Vivian. Several people at the client dinner and the charity gala can confirm we were attending as a couple, Vivian said. And my assistant can verify that I requested time off my calendar for personal matters related to preparing for these events. I also have text messages between Noah and myself discussing the arrangement, if you'd like to review them. That won't be necessary at this time, Linda said. What I'm trying to understand is whether this relationship constitutes a violation of our workplace conduct policies. Ms. Rowe, as CEO, you're held to a higher standard. Dating a subordinate employee, regardless of the circumstances, creates the appearance of impropriety, if not actual conflict of interest. I understand that, Vivian said, which is why Noah and I plan to address it this morning. We've already discussed restructuring Noah's reporting relationship so that he no longer reports to me directly or indirectly. We're willing to sign any additional agreements or disclosures you require. We want to do this right. The problem, Robert Chen interjected, is that the damage is already done. This email went to the entire board. People are talking. Clients are asking questions. The optics are terrible. CEO dating a junior employee, significant age gap, secret relationship. It looks like exactly the kind of scandal this company doesn't need. With all due respect, Robert, Vivian said, her voice taking on an edge, the only scandal here is that someone felt the need to weaponize a consensual adult relationship for their own purposes. Noah and I are both single. We're both adults. We developed feelings for each other, and we're handling the disclosure appropriately. The fact that someone chose to make it public in the most damaging way possible says more about them than it does about us. Nevertheless, Chen continued, we have to consider what's best for the company, and I'm not sure having our CEO involved with a subordinate, regardless of the circumstances, is what's best. The implicit threat hung in the air. Vivian's hand clenched on the table, but her expression remained composed. Are you suggesting I should end my relationship to maintain my position? Vivian asked quietly. I'm suggesting that as CEO, you have to make difficult choices. Your personal life affects the company whether you want it to or not. That's not fair, Noah interjected, unable to stay quiet. You're asking her to choose between her personal happiness and her professional success. Would you ask the same of a male CEO? Because I noticed that when David Hartford was dating his assistant 3 years ago, this board didn't say a word. When Marcus Klein married someone 20 years younger who used to work in his department, there was no investigation. But Vivian dates someone and suddenly it's a scandal that requires intervention? The room went silent. Linda Morrison looked uncomfortable. Sarah Winters looked impressed. Robert Chen looked furious. "Mr. Carter, you're out of line," Chen said. "Am I? Or am I just pointing out a double standard that everyone else is too polite to mention?" Noah turned to address the full board. "I understand you have to consider what's best for the company, but what's best for this company is keeping the brilliant, dedicated CEO who's grown it by 40% in 5 years, who's brought in major clients, who's built an incredible reputation, who's made this one of the most respected agencies in New York. Vivian Rowe's personal life doesn't diminish any of that." "It does if it makes her look unprofessional," Chen countered. "Then the problem isn't her relationship. The problem is a business culture that judges women more harshly than men for the same behavior. And maybe that's what we should be investigating." Vivian's hand found Noah's under the table, squeezing hard. A warning or gratitude, he couldn't tell. "I appreciate Mr. Carter's defense," Sarah Winters said, speaking up for the first time. "And I tend to agree with him. Vivian has been an exemplary CEO. One relationship, properly disclosed and managed, shouldn't overshadow years of excellent leadership. However, we do need to address the perception issue. The anonymous email called for an investigation. If we don't respond appropriately, it looks like we're protecting Vivian because she's CEO." "So what do you suggest?" Vivian asked. Sarah considered. "Full transparency. We issue a statement acknowledging that you and Mr. Carter are in a relationship, that it's been properly disclosed to HR, and that appropriate measures have been taken to prevent any conflict of interest. We make it boring, procedural, exactly what policy requires. We take the scandal out of it by treating it as routine." "And if that's not enough?" Linda asked. "If clients or employees push back?" "Then we deal with it as it comes, but I don't think we should make preemptive sacrifices based on hypothetical objections." Robert Chen shook his head. "I disagree. I think this is a liability. I think Ms. Rowe should take a leave of absence while we conduct a full review of her conduct and decide the best path forward." "Absolutely not," Sarah said firmly. "Vivian has done nothing wrong. Taking a leave of absence implies guilt and instability. It's exactly the wrong message to send." The board members began arguing among themselves, their voices rising. Vivian sat perfectly still, watching her professional fate being debated like a business decision, which Noah supposed it was. Finally, Linda Morrison held up a hand for silence. "I think we need to vote," she said. "The question is whether Ms. Rowe's relationship with Mr. Carter constitutes a violation of company policy serious enough to warrant disciplinary action. Those in favor of disciplinary action?" Robert Chen raised his hand. One other board member, an older man Noah didn't know, raised his as well. "Those opposed?" Sarah Winters and the other female board member raised their hands immediately. The fifth member, a younger man who'd been silent throughout, hesitated, then raised his hand as well. 3-2. Against disciplinary action. Noah felt relief flood through him, but it was short-lived. "However," Linda continued, "there is the matter of restructuring Mr. Carter's position to eliminate the conflict of interest. We'll need to expedite that process, and both of you will need to sign relationship disclosure forms and agree to additional oversight for the next 6 months to ensure there's no favoritism or inappropriate conduct." "We'll sign whatever you need," Vivian said. "And Mr. Carter, effective immediately, you'll report to David Hutchins in the strategy department rather than through the creative team. Your salary and title remain unchanged, but your direct supervisor can no longer have any connection to Ms. Rowe's chain of command." "Understood," Noah said. The meeting continued for another 30 minutes, covering logistics and paperwork and policies. Throughout it all, Vivian remained composed, professional, the perfect CEO. But Noah could see the toll it was taking, the slight tremor in her hands when she signed the disclosure forms, the tightness around her eyes, the way she held herself too rigidly, like if she relaxed even slightly, she might shatter. Finally, they were dismissed. As they stood to leave, Sarah Winters caught Vivian's arm. For what it's worth, she said quietly, I think you handled this with grace, and I think you deserve to be happy. Thank you, Sarah, Vivian said, her voice rough with suppressed emotion. They walked out of the conference room together into a hallway where dozens of eyes tracked their movement. The news had spread throughout the office. Everyone knew about the meeting. Everyone was watching to see what would happen. Vivian held her head high, her hand briefly touching Noah's arm in a gesture that was both intimate and defiant. Let them look. Let them judge. They'd survived. Your office or mine? Noah asked quietly as they reached the elevator. Neither. We're leaving. What? I'm taking the rest of the day off. We both are. I can't be here right now, pretending everything's normal. I can't face the whispers and the stares. I need... Her voice cracked slightly. I need to not be the CEO for a few hours. They left the building through the parking garage to avoid the main lobby's curious stares. Vivian's car, a sleek black sedan she rarely drove herself, was waiting. She got behind the wheel and Noah slid into the passenger seat. Where are we going? He asked. Somewhere real, Vivian said, and pulled out into traffic. They drove north out of Manhattan, crossing the George Washington Bridge into upstate New York. Vivian didn't speak, focused entirely on driving, her hands white-knuckled on the wheel. Noah didn't push her. He just watched the city fall away, replaced by trees and hills and the kind of open space that felt impossible after weeks of Manhattan's claustrophobic intensity. 2 hours later, they pulled up to a small cabin nestled in the Catskills. It was beautiful in a rustic way, wood-sided, with a wraparound porch and windows looking out on a lake that reflected the late autumn sky. This is yours? Noah asked. I bought it 5 years ago, thinking Grant and I would use it for weekends. We came here twice. After we broke up, I couldn't bring myself to sell it, but I couldn't bring myself to visit either. It's just been sitting here, empty. She unlocked the door and they stepped into a space that was somehow both abandoned and welcoming. Dust covers over the furniture, but underneath Noah could see comfortable couches and a fireplace and bookshelves stuffed with novels. A kitchen that looked well used despite the years of neglect. Photos on the mantel of a younger Vivian with her mother, both of them laughing. Vivian walked through the cabin like a ghost returning to a haunted house, touching things gently. The back of a chair, a bookshelf, a throw blanket. I came here the weekend after I found out about Grant's affairs, she said quietly. I was going to throw all his things in the lake. Burn them, maybe. Have some grand cathartic moment. But when I got here, I just sat on the porch and cried for 2 days straight, and then I locked everything up and never came back. Why did you bring me here? Vivian turned to face him, and the vulnerability in her expression made Noah's chest ache. Because this is the only place I've ever been able to fall apart. The only place where I'm not the CEO or the ice queen or the woman who has to hold it together. I'm just me. And I wanted you to see that. The me that falls apart. As if on cue, Vivian's composure finally shattered. She sank onto the dust-covered couch and buried her face in her hands, her shoulders shaking with sobs she'd been holding back for hours. Noah sat beside her, pulling her into his arms. She clung to him like a lifeline, crying with the kind of complete abandon that spoke to years of suppressed emotion, not just today's crisis. I almost lost everything, she choked out between sobs. My company, my reputation, you. I almost lost all of it because I was stupid enough to fall in love. You didn't lose anything. We survived. Barely. And only because the vote went our way. If one more board member had sided with Chen, she pulled back, her face blotchy and tear-stained and more beautiful than Noah had ever seen it. How do we do this, Noah? How do we build a relationship when the whole world is waiting for us to fail? We do it by not caring what the whole world thinks. We do it by being honest with each other and fighting for each other and remembering why we're doing this in the first place. Because we're stupidly in love, Vivian said, echoing his words from Sunday morning. Because we're stupidly in love, Noah confirmed. Vivian laughed through her tears. When did you become the wise one? I learned from the best. They sat there as afternoon faded into evening, holding each other in the cabin that Vivian had bought for a future that never materialized. Outside, the lake turned gold with sunset, then silver with moonrise. Inside, Noah built a fire in the fireplace while Vivian found wine and crackers and cheese that was somehow still good despite the years of abandonment. They talked for hours about the meeting, about their fears, about what came next, about how to navigate a relationship under scrutiny, how to protect each other while also protecting themselves, how to build something real in the ruins of Vivian's carefully controlled life. "I need to tell you something," Vivian said around midnight, curled against Noah on the couch. "Something I haven't said." "Okay." "I love you." The words came out quiet but certain. "I fought it for weeks because it terrified me. But today, sitting in that conference room, all I could think was that if I lost you, nothing else mattered. Not the company, not my reputation, not any of it. You matter more." Noah's throat went tight. "Say it again." "I love you, Noah Carter. I love your optimism and your kindness and the way you see the best in people even when they don't deserve it. I love that you defend me when no one else will. I love that you make me want to be brave instead of just being careful. I love you." Noah kissed her, deep and slow and full of promise. When they broke apart, both of them were crying. "I love you too," he whispered against her lips. "I'm going to keep loving you through every board meeting and every complication and every moment when you're terrified. I'm not going anywhere. Even though I'm difficult and demanding and married to my work, even though. Because you're also brilliant and fierce and brave enough to choose happiness even when it's risky. That's the woman I love." They spent the night at the cabin, wrapped up in each other and old blankets, talking and kissing and making promises about a future that felt both uncertain and inevitable. When morning came, they drove back to the city together, hands linked across the center console, ready to face whatever came next. The next few weeks were a strange adjustment. Noah moved to the strategy department, which was awkward but manageable. Some colleagues were supportive, others coldly professional, a few outright hostile. The gossip eventually died down to background noise, just another piece of office drama to be replaced by the next scandal. Vivian faced more scrutiny. Clients asked pointed questions. Competitors whispered about her judgment. Industry publications ran thinly veiled articles about CEOs who let personal relationships compromise their leadership. But she weathered it all with the same steel spine she'd always had, refusing to apologize for being happy. The investigation into the anonymous email went nowhere. The trail was too well covered, though everyone suspected Grant was behind it. Vivian considered legal action, but ultimately decided it wasn't worth the energy. Grant had already lost the battle that mattered. He'd tried to destroy her and failed. 6 weeks after the board meeting, Noah and Vivian attended another charity gala together. This time there was no pretense, no performance. They walked in as a real couple, openly affectionate, completely unbothered by the stares. Grant was there, alone this time, looking diminished somehow. When he saw them, he turned away. Vivian didn't even glance in his direction. "He's not worth your attention," Noah murmured. "I know," Vivian said, smiling up at him. "I have better things to focus on." They danced under the chandeliers, and this time Vivian looked nothing but happy. Free from fear, from pretense, from the weight of other people's expectations. "Thank you," she said as they swayed to the music. "For what?" "For being brave when I couldn't be. For fighting for us. For loving me even when it was complicated." "It's still complicated," Noah pointed out. "Yes, but it's also real and worth it." 3 months later, on a Friday evening in February, Noah found himself back at the Crown and Anchor, the bar where this whole impossible story had started. But this time, Vivian was there by choice, not by panic. She sat at the bar in jeans and a sweater, her hair down, looking relaxed and happy, and nothing like the terrified woman who'd grabbed his wrist that night in November. "Remember this place?" Noah asked, sliding onto the stool beside her. "How could I forget? This is where I threatened to fire you if you didn't take me home." Worst pickup line ever. "It worked, didn't it?" Noah laughed, flagging down the bartender for drinks. Around them, the Friday night crowd buzzed with their own dramas and romances and disasters. But Noah and Vivian existed in their own bubble, comfortable and content. "I have something to tell you," Vivian said, her fingers playing with the stem of her wine glass. "Should I be worried?" "That depends on how you feel about permanence." Noah's heart skipped. "What kind of permanence?" Vivian reached into her bag and pulled out a small velvet box. Noah's eyes widened. Vivian, wait, it's not what you think. Not exactly. She opened the box to reveal two simple matching bands, white gold, elegant, understated. I'm not proposing, not yet, not until we're both ready. But I wanted you to know that I'm thinking about it, that I can imagine a future where this, she gestured between them, is permanent, where we stop worrying about what everyone else thinks and just commit to each other completely. Noah took one of the rings, studying it in the dim bar light. These are beautiful. They're a promise that I'm all in, that I'm not running away when things get hard, that you're not just a chapter in my story, you're the rest of it, if you want to be. Noah slipped the ring onto his finger. It fit perfectly, like it had been made for him, which, knowing Vivian, it probably had been. I want to be, he said quietly. I want all of it. The complications and the board meetings and the gossip. I want the cabin in the Catskills and Sunday mornings making risotto. I want your brilliant mind and your terrible jokes and the way you fall asleep during old movies, even though you love them. I want all of it. Vivian's eyes glistened. Even though I'm still learning how to be vulnerable, even though I still have nightmares about losing you, even though we'll learn together. She kissed him there in the bar, right where their story had started, surrounded by strangers who had no idea they were witnessing the full circle of something that had begun in panic and fear and evolved into something real and lasting and brave. When they pulled apart, Vivian was wearing the matching ring. They held up their hands, the bands catching the light, a promise to each other that needed no witnesses or official declarations, just two people who'd been brave enough to risk everything for something real. Take me home, Vivian said, echoing those first desperate words from months ago. But this time there was no threat, no desperation, no fear, just love and choice, and the certainty that whatever came next, they'd face it together. Always, Noah said. They walked out of the Crown and Anchor hand in hand, two people who'd survived scandal and scrutiny and their own fears to build something neither of them had believed possible. The November night had turned into a February evening, cold but promising spring. Manhattan glittered around them, indifferent as always to human drama, already moving on to the next story. But Noah and Vivian had found their ending, and their beginning. Not perfect, not simple, but absolutely, completely real. And in a city built on facades and performances and carefully curated images that made it rare and precious and worth every risk they'd taken to find it, the Ice Queen had melted. The junior creative had found his voice, and together they'd proven that sometimes the most complicated beginnings lead to the most beautiful endings. Sometimes all it takes is one person brave enough to say, "Take me home," and another brave enough to answer, "Always." Sometimes love is messy and scandalous and complicated and absolutely worth fighting for. And sometimes, in the middle of Manhattan's endless chaos, two people find exactly what they needed in the last place they expected to look. In each other. That night they went home to Vivian's brownstone, to the life they were building together one brave choice at a time. And as they stood in her kitchen cooking dinner side by side, laughing about something ridiculous, the matching rings on their fingers catching the light, Noah realized that this was what happiness looked like. Not the absence of complications or fear or challenge, but the presence of someone who made facing all of it worthwhile. Someone who chose you. Every day. Even when it was hard. Especially when it was hard. And that, Noah thought as Vivian smiled at him over her wine glass, her eyes full of love and promise and hope for all the tomorrows they'd face together, was the best ending of all. Not an ending at all, really. Just a beginning that they'd been brave enough to fight for.